Why did you do that?
Had to. All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and at this time, I'd like to have an acceptance of our meeting for October 16th, 2018, for the Town of Scituate Board of Selectmen.
Second.
Motion to accept our agenda by Ms. Canfield, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, first, and after moving on, I'd like to move over to walk-ins. Are there any walk-ins this evening? Seeing none, that's great. We're moving further, and we'll go to the report of the town administrator. Jim, what do you have to report?
Very brief couple updates. First, I want to introduce the board to Kyle Boyd. Kyle's our new coastal resource officer.
Kyle, welcome.
Kyle's from
How are you?
Tewksbury, where he was the conservation agent and the town planner for a little while. He's got 2 bachelor's degrees, one in regional planning and one in geography and environmental science, and a master's in regional planning from the finest university in the Commonwealth, University of Massachusetts in Amherst.
Congratulations, and welcome aboard.
So Kyle's on board, and he's working and digging through a massive stuff, so we're lucky to have him. Brad and Bob Clark did a very good job getting to the candidates and recommending Kyle. So
Our hope, when do you start officially?
Right.
Today?
already started.
Well, our hope is that 3 weeks in, oh, you're lucky, because I think it was 5 days in for your town administrator, and we had 2 days in, we had our first major storm, and it just kept going, so, well, welcome. You got a great position, you got a great boss, and you got great people who are working alongside. Scituate is, I think, among the leaders for coastal research, or coastal resources, as far as like looking at the various kind of protections for foreshore protection, as well as, God bless, as well as helping, people raise their house pursuant to FEMA, being ahead of the curve. There's a lot. Don't get inundated and bowled over by it. But you got all these people who can help you, and I'll tell you right now, it's a great town to work for.
Thank you very much. Yep, great foundation, too. We've done such great work on it. Nancy did a great job, and before her, Patrick as well, so you got good stuff to build on. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Well, thank you.
Are you still hiding out in the basement?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll come down and find you.
Well, we've, the Board of Health has moved over to the fire station finally,
Wow, good.
so we'll be repositioning some offices up here, and then eventually Kyle will be up here, out of the basement.
Great.
Good. Well, welcome aboard. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Welcome.
Thank you, Kyle.
Look forward to working.
All right.
Yeah, nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you.
That's the pleasant news, Jim. What's the bad news, or is there any?
I don't have a whole lot of bad news.
Good.
Ice pigging. The water department, this week, Monday, Tuesday, and tomorrow, have been out finding all the gates, opening and closing all the gates, making sure the gates that we're gonna need for the ice pigging are gonna work. The ice pigging, first ice pigging will take place Thursday night. We're gonna do it overnight because that part of the driftway we're gonna do has some large water users. So we're gonna do it overnight to try to, minimize the disruption to the users. So that'll be Thursday night, and then we'll start up again on Monday and keep going down the driftway, and we'll see how that works. I'm hoping to get some good pictures and.
John?
Just before you move on to anything else, and I know I've seen the billboards, just make sure the nursing homes know and things like that. I've seen the billboards, but still.
And they often bring water over, they're all set, they said we
Good.
got plenty of water where we're doing it, the time frame we're doing it at night, they didn't see it as any issue.
Good.
So,
Great. Okay.
at least so far, that part's been taken care
And
of.
that's one of the reasons we're doing it at night, Sean.
No, I
is
know that, but I just want to make sure they knew it. That's all. All right.
And you did do door knockers, is that what I heard, for residents, or?
I don't think they did door knockers, I'll confirm that. We were talking about doing door knockers, but it was a company that we had flyers out, but I'll confirm that.
Okay.
We put out
Just been
flyers,
an attempt to,
Facebook,
okay.
signboards, and we did the robocalls, right?
Yes.
A robocall too?
Yep.
Okay, great.
People want to go watch. I mean, it's, at least, I think it would be interesting if they had an ability to, at least, providing they're not in the way, if you're going to be down the driftway or something, for them to be able to kind of see. Is there an ability for that to happen? I think it would be,
They're gonna be doing it.
not at
Middle of the
night.
night.
Not at night, but Monday. You mentioned Monday, they're going to be continuing it.
We'll have some videos, we'll hopefully be able to show the border, we can post it on the website. The only issue is, it is a traffic area, I'd be hesitant about having a crowd of people in the roadway, if we have any areas there, but, by all means.
Okay, so if they're if you're along the driftway, maybe that, obviously with the bike path, that would be
You
sufficient.
won't be able to miss us.
Yeah,
It'll be
okay.
a big section of it.
Good. Other
With
questions?
the ice in it.
Good.
I can piggyback on the water talk if you want.
Piggyback?
I know, I like that.
Piggy, I like
No
this.
pun intended. I asked to meet with actually Kevin and Jim and Sean and Ty and Bond and,
Mike?
yeah, from Ty and Bond, Mike, and someone else was there, Nancy and John.
Yep.
And we started looking at the water stuff, and I know the board has met with some people as well, looked at the financial impacts of it, and really are trying to get a good assessment of what our current condition is and what a 10-year plan is going to be to get us where we want to be. I was impressed by the fact that they do have a lot of stuff in place, and a lot of needs, and I just want to let the town know that we're on path of getting that. I would say within a couple of weeks, we'll get a report out to us that'll show, breaking down major categories, what's the status of our storage, what's the status of our distribution system, what's the status of our supply, and as well as the water quality, really, our supply, and the filtration, our plant.
Yep.
So I hope to get a really good plan together so we can see what's going on. I will say, I did get a lot of data. I got the financial data from Nancy as well, and we looked at that, and it was interesting. This one you guys may, or at least the two of you may remember, way back when, and I see Al in the crowd as well, back in 2000, Ty and Bond does an analysis of like 12 local communities and rates what our water rates are on an apples-to-apples basis. And back in 2002, 2004, 6, 8, 9, 10, and 12, we were the 10th lowest of 11 towns in terms of what our water rate was. And that's what I recall, and I think you guys did too. And that's where we came on board with the brown water, which it was always brown water here, but it seemed to be getting a little bit worse in that part of time. And that's where we made that heavy investment into the 21 miles of replacing the really old pipes, which we thought at that time was going to solve the problem. And Al came in and showed us pictures of the, corroded pipes, and went hard on that. At that point in time, I think we knew at that point in time, our rates weren't going to get up into the upper middle side of these 11 communities, which include all our surrounding communities. And as of 2019, we're projected to be the 4th of the 11th communities. So last meeting, when Nancy had given me stats, that was more, it wasn't the same group of people. It was a different group of people that showed us being, in the 2, 3, 4, 8 level of those groups. But of our local communities, it's predicted that we'll be number 4 of 11, just after doing those projects and a few other things that we have built in. But that's what I remembered, and I remembered, like I said, us being very, very low and realizing that we had to invest in the infrastructure, and that's why we kind of went as fast and as heavy as we could in terms of fixing those pipes. So there's a lot of the financial stuff that'll come out in these meetings, but I just wanted to let everybody know that there will be a report coming out soon that breaks it down and really gives an assessment of where we are and what we need to do to get where we want to be on a longer-term plan, which will have details of capital items, dollars, and timeframes. So I'm glad to be involved in that, and these guys know what they're doing, so.
Good.
Next, I want to give a congratulations and a good job to Scituate firefighter paramedic Jim Sweeney and his son Jack. Friday night at the Whitman-Hanson football game, one of the officials collapsed on the field. Jack, the son, a sophomore at Whitman-Hanson, sprinted for the nearest defibrillator while his father went out on the field to assist the trainer. According to Bob Rogers, the AD at Whitman-Hanson and the Enterprise, Jim quickly sprinted onto the field and took command of the situation. His professionalism and knowledge was instrumental in the medical treatment. Luckily, the official didn't need the AED, but after some treatment from Jim, he came to, was transported to a local hospital, and was reported in stable condition. So one of Situate's finest, not even working off-duty, just had his son's football game, sprung into action, and I think he and his son deserve congratulations and a good job for the work they did Friday night at Whitman-Hanson. Finally, the summer's over, kids are back in school, so it must be time again for coffee with the crew. So Chief Stewart, Chief Murphy, Kevin and I, next Friday, the 26th, right now we're planning on being at the Sand Hills General Store from 8 to 9:30. Anybody who wants to come by and have a cup of coffee, hang out and chat. It's been a good thing. We kind of took the summer off, but we're going to be back out there next Friday and start it up again. So, again, anybody who wants to join us, right now we're planning on being down in Sand Hills.
Any other questions from the board? I do have one thing I want to mention, and that is that there's an organization called the International City of County Management. It was founded in 1914. But what this management association does is it advances professional local government through its leadership, its management, involvement, ethics, innovation, and they're the leading professional association dedicated to creating and supporting, thriving communities, both here in New England and throughout the country and actually the world. The ICMA members are the professional towns. They're also cities, county managers, administrators, town administrators, who are appointed by elected officials, which in this case would be the Board of Selectmen, to oversee the day-to-day operation of our town. As many people realize that, while we're 5 members who are elected, we also work. And so consequently, we end up hiring an administrator. That is the town administrator. And so the administrator is the one who actually does the work on behalf of the board on the day-to-day needs. Obviously, what I want to drive at is that at the annual ICM conference in Baltimore, Maryland in September, the ICMA was recognizing one person in particular and honoring him for 20 years of service as a member, and that happens to be Jim Boudreau. And I wanted to at least recognize for Jim for his service, and also getting recognized by the ICMA. I wanted to make sure that not only the board knows it, not only the town employees, but actually residents realize that, because that's a long-time commitment for excellence. It's not just a accolade, it's actually, quite a standard. So I want to say congratulations, Jim. Well done. Town of Scituate's going to be looking for you to do this for another 20 years. You've only done it for 1 year. You've already now got 1 in the book, so we'll give you 19 more. But I have to say, I just want to say we're very proud of you, and I want to say thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that's for you.
That's all I have.
All right. Moving on. I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, which happens to be a public hearing to discuss and vote Comcast license renewal. And I have Al Bankert here on that issue, and I believe with him is a gentleman, I presume, from Comcast.
Good evening.
Good evening, Al.
Been a while.
It has. I don't see you too often now. It's very nice. It's
Much
always-
to your relief.
Well, I wouldn't say that. It's always a pleasure to have you come.
Okay, great. With me here tonight is Mike Gala, who is the Senior Government Affairs Manager with Comcast. And so if we have some questions that you want to discuss, then Mike is here to answer those questions for us, all right? So tonight, we are going to discuss the renewal of the cable TV license held by Comcast. Comcast of Massachusetts currently holds a non-exclusive license to distribute cable television services to the homes and businesses in Scituate. This is a 10-year license that expires this coming November 5th, so it's time for renewal. The license, I said, was non-exclusive, which means that it does not prohibit other cable carriers from coming into town and setting up businesses and seeking a license of their own. Up to this point, however, we've had no other cable or fiber companies come forward to the board, although there's been some discussion apparently to see if there's any interest. There hasn't been interest. Nonetheless, Comcast is seeking renewal of their license, and this license gives them the opportunity to continue to install their equipment along our streets. And Massachusetts General Law, Chapter, I won't read all of that, and the 1992 Cable Television Consumer Protection and Competition Act, which is a federal law, grants certain authority to the Board of Selectmen to negotiate terms of a new cable TV license. So I want to be clear in that. And I'll tell you what your parameters are in just a second. But to guide us, we hired an attorney, William Solomon of Stoneham, to provide the legal and consulting services. Since this is something we do so seldom as a town, we want to work with someone who does it as a living. So that is his area of expertise, and he has helped negotiate with Comcast for the renewal of Comcast's license. And he's been working to help us extract the best possible deal we could get if you choose to grant this license. So what's the town's authority? By law, you have the authority to negotiate a cable license, but it's quite narrow. The license cannot cover specific television content. You cannot cover cable fees, cannot cover internet, cannot cover voice services. The FCC has jurisdiction over all those other areas. The license, however, does cover things that you can establish requirements for the installation and maintenance equipment along our public ways. What does it look like? What routes can they take? How do the poles get replaced when they're damaged? That sort of thing. You can negotiate the availability of a customer service center and a call center that our residents and businesses can call if there's issues. You can negotiate response time to requests to install services or correct problems, complaint resolution procedures, customer privacy considerations, insurance, bonding, and also providing television cable channel capacity for public, educational, and government access channels. In other words, the local channel 8, 9, and 22, to be operated by the town. The license that we have worked through covers the areas that we can do negotiating in, covering all of those areas. And in addition, to the proposed license renewal delivers significant improvements to the town, we think. Number one, Comcast will continue to provide cable services to all of our town and school buildings. Number two, they'll double the number of locations from which live telecasts can originate by installing feed lines to what's called the dead end for live coverage at the library and at the public services complex. They'll do that there's a timeline for them to do that. It's not immediate, it's like 10 months out or 15 months out. 18 months out. So they have 18 months to connect those buildings up, but they're working diligently to do it. So once we sign, they'll get going on it. Currently, they have live feeds, as you know, from Town Hall and from the high school. And if we want to extend it within the high school, different parts of the high school, then that's up to us to go do that. So we'll need to make investments in the equipment that we will own in the high school or within the library or within Town Hall to improve our equipment and access to, say, the auditorium or whatever. So we need funding to do those kinds of things and to support our programs and to expand our programs. Comcast, as a result of this license being proposed, Comcast will increase their payments to the town for these services. Currently, they pay 3% of their gross revenues to support community television. The formula they've agreed to change will now include additional areas of revenue, of their revenue streams, and it will increase the rate to 5% of their broader revenue streams, which will net an additional nearly $200,000 per year more based upon their current revenue stream. So we'll be looking at an additional $200,000 of revenue coming in to support expanding coverage of governmental, public access, and school services. In addition, they'll provide $10,000 per year, a total of $100,000 over the 10-year contract to cover the cost of updating equipment as a capital lump sum. They will, in addition, for the benefit of our residents, implement a senior citizen discount program. And the last thing that's been done in this contract is all the contract language has been updated to the current best standards by Attorney Solomon. So it matches the best of what everybody else has been doing in terms of working with their cable providers. So I recommend that the Board of Selectmen renew the Comcast license as attached, and I'll leave it now open for questions.
Questions from the board? Karen?
A couple. On the equipment, are there height restrictions and things about limitations of what the poles can physically look like at all? I didn't see that in the...
No, we didn't see that. We didn't put that in there. There are utility, actually the poles are owned not by Comcast, but they're owned by
Oh, right.
the telephone company in some cases and the utility, the power company in some cases.
Okay.
And they have those standards.
Okay.
There is a standard on where Comcast lines are located on those cables, however.
Okay, and you just said that there's an 18-month window to do the new lines? I thought the contract said 9 months, which even that I thought was not quick enough, but,
Our standard at Comcast, because of budgeting and scheduling, as you can imagine, all the cities and towns throughout
Yeah.
Massachusetts, not everybody's up every year, but we have to effectively budget and schedule out. So 18 months is our window that we put in there. I can say that we've had this negotiated for a long time, and I've put it in the queue for 2019.
okay, great. And then, this is really more for the town, is, I think it's really important that we look at how we can get the Performing Arts Center online and what those costs are sooner rather than later, so once, we
Right, so
we
this
start
funding
doing
will
that.
help with that.
Yeah, that I think is very important. And then a question for Nancy, is the revenue stream from this payment, where does that go?
There's a PEG access revolving fund that's dedicated just for those fees.
Okay, thank you.
John?
And the 195,000 is not guaranteed. It's really based on the percentage, and that's really going to be passed on to the users, so
Yes.
it's really our own money coming back.
Yes,
So
as households grow and their
customer base,
subscribers grow, then their base grows. Or as rates go up, which we hope they never do, but they seem to do occasionally, as they negotiate higher rates with the state, with the Department of Public Utilities, then that would increase their revenue, which then increases the revenue that comes back to the town.
unless people all of a sudden put up a bunch of dishes.
True.
Something like that, so then it could go the other way. All right, that's the only thing that jumped out to me. Thank you.
Tony?
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, the rates, the 3%, I guess my question to you is, the 3% is the surcharge that goes on our bill. So it's on the individual's bill is what it used to be, the $1.83 or whatever they charge everybody in town is what actually comes into the town. When it went up to 5%, is that coming from a different bucket of money, or is that the fee that's going on the individual bills just going up?
No, that's not going on the bills.
No, you see,
It's on the bill.
you will see that on the bill.
It's on the bill.
Yeah, it's a franchise fee that you'll see on the bill.
So
It's not a set, because it's 5% of your bill, so it's different for everybody.
So it's really
set
not
fee.
coming from Comcast, it's coming from the users are paying it, and it's going to the town.
Yes, I mean, what happens is they pay their bill, and we kick back 5%.
Right, but that's an extra, so I pay $7,000 a month for every channel, and then on the bottom, there's a $2.50 charge that ends up coming back to the town.
Correct.
Okay, and the marketing streams that you say, I think it says in here, it's not like there's a 3% charge and more money's coming from somewhere else, it's just that fee's gonna go up on the individual's bill.
It's
That's
just
gonna
that
come-
those, in the past, that revenue has not been counted as part of their revenue. In other words, they have revenue coming in from the subscribers,
Search, yeah.
from advertising, and so now that advertising is also considered part of the revenue on which the 5% is calculated.
Okay, but my question is, and I know I'm not saying it very well, when it goes from 3 to 5%, is that just the user's fee going up to 5%, or is it 3% on the bill and Comcast is kicking it in from some other source?
There's other, as Al just mentioned, there are other sources like pay-per-view, home shopping, advertising, that type of stuff that isn't, I mean, unless you're actually, buying, obviously, a pay-per-view fight or something like that, that's other revenue that's coming back to the town.
So the franchise fee isn't going up, it's gonna stay at like the 3% level, and the other money's coming from somewhere else?
Yes.
Okay. And just to Sean's point, the numbers, I mean, the revenue's been pretty steady for, I think I negotiated this thing the last time, over all those years. And Nancy, we usually have a pretty good amount of money in there. It's limited to what you can spend it on. You just can't go buy a fire truck with it. It has to go towards cable, television, resource-type activities, internet, equipment for the for the studio over at the high school, is that right? But do you know what the balance is in that revolving fund?
$1,015, $793.80, $1,015.
$1,000?
No, I'm sorry. It's been a long day. Let's try that one more time. $1,015,793.
What's a zero?
So that's what's been funding, for instance, all of the AV infrastructure at the public safety building. And, oh gosh, I'm sorry. That's my daughter.
She's amazing.
Right, so there's $1 million in that fund.
Yes, and
Which is good. We can use it to build out the Performing Arts Center or other functionality.
And we can use it to improve the quality of broadcast from this room. And we use it to, they're working on the AV infrastructure at the library, so that will be, a better better infrastructure for, broadcasting from there.
Right.
And we can use it then to connect the Performing Arts Center. So that's what those monies go to.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, you've stated it earlier, we get emails occasionally, all of us do, about people complaining about lack of competition, but has nothing to do with Comcast. Comcast, thank you for providing the service here. And if someone else wanted to come into the market, they're open to. This contract does not stop them from doing that, so that's all I have.
Any other? I have one question, and maybe it's, you're head of the governmental affairs, so in other words, Gallo, is it, Mr. Gallo?
Gallo, yes.
So when poles that are sistered, because they've been taken down and they sister them up because they got to transfer the wires, would it be you that we get in touch with? Because my understanding is it's Comcast is the reason why we're unable to replace some of the poles, and they're sistered up. And to make this happen,
Yeah,
that's
sometimes
all.
that can be misleading, but then sometimes it is us, but, yeah.
Again,
I would be the-
I'm just, that's what
Sure.
I've heard, I'm not blaming, I'm just saying, if there is, then we have a contact that we can get in touch
Yeah,
with.
I am the
Okay.
contact, so I'm your contact for Scituate. I cover pretty much, if you draw a line from Hingham all the way down to P-Town.
Gotcha, okay. And I'm not saying that, after major storms that we're looking to have things, but in
Sure.
time, that's all.
And there is a priority level there, like, we can't get off the pole until the person before us gets off the pole and stuff like that, so, that can be, but if you have some that you're aware of, we can look into them.
Fair enough, I appreciate that.
There's been a new system put in place, too, called NJUNS, which is an alerting system that gets the next in line alerted that it's their turn to go move that wire. It used to be kind of a higgly-piggly system. Now it's very straightforward. And the reason I know about that is because I get those calls about streetlights that need to be moved before then the next utility can move theirs. Now that we own those streetlights, we're now in the system and have to, if a pole's replaced, move the
You gotta get
streetlight. So it's a better system, and I've seen it, things move more quickly now on replacing bad poles.
Good. Fair enough, thank you. All right, I would entertain a motion, please.
I hereby move that the Board of Selectmen, as the cable television license issuing authority, vote as follows. To grant the subject cable television renewal license with an effective date of November 6, 2018 to Comcast of Massachusetts, Incorporated. All terms and conditions contained in this renewal license have been agreed to by Comcast. Comcast, by and through its authorized representative, shall execute this renewal license as set out in the signature page of the renewal license.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Ms. Canfield. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And also, I hereby move the Board of Selectmen as the Cable Television Licensing Authority vote as follows: to recognize, acknowledge, and accept the senior citizen discount letter from Comcast dated November 6, 2018, and signed by Comcast's Senior Manager of Government and Regulatory Affairs, Michael Gallo.
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Gallo, thank you. Al, thank you. I do have the agreements here, and if you would mind waiting a few minutes, we can sign them as we proceed to the next one, and that way we can have it taken care of. How about
Or
that?
you can stay to 11.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. In the meantime, as we're signing this, I was wondering if maybe we could bring up the Sister City, Ireland, Cork County. Westport Municipal District Committee, if that's okay. And I know that's Brenda O'Connor, the chair. And actually, you know what? I'd actually wouldn't mind having the committee members. Kevin, come on up. John, you come on up. Anybody I'm missing here? Just sit in the back, in the row here. That would be great. Thank you.
There you go, Al.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you. Okay, Al.
Much more.
Oh, another one. There's more.
Al, thank you.
Hey, Al?
On behalf of the board, I want to thank Brenda, I want to thank each and every committee member for what you did, entertaining our guests from Ireland. It was a phenomenal agenda. The time, it was short. Each of the board members attempted to try to partake in any of the many events that you had. And I have to tell you, for the ones that I went to, it was fun. I mean, I hate to say it in the sense that it's official, but I mean, sometimes you go to official events and it's very official, and that's fine. That's always important to have that. That's the respect and the dignity. But this was something much warmer in the sharing the dignity and respect of our mutual governments and our hopeful exchanges. It was just nice people, common denominator there, and it was just open and friendly. And I have to say, what was scheduled and planned, the hard work that all of you put together on this, to showcase, our town and to demonstrate why I think it would be a really great partnership with Cork County. You hit it out of the park. It was just phenomenal. But so I wanted, at least my board wanted to bring you in. We wanted to at least talk to you. We'd like to have an opportunity to hear back for your perception and what you thought. But I just have to say, from my standpoint, I can't thank you all enough for doing it. And I know, I remember talking with Brenda and a few other people saying that, the bar was raised pretty high by the Cork County Council. And unfortunately, we heard it from you. We weren't able to partake in it. But let me tell you, you just elevated it another, 10 meters. I mean, it's well done, well done. So, any event, I want at least to have my board also have an opportunity, and then I'd like to turn it over to Brenda and any committee member. I know that some of them are not here, and I'll recognize them also. But I just want to at least say thank you. Sean?
Oh, thank you. No, I hope they enjoyed it as much as I did. Like John said, it was a very enjoyable time, but it was a learning experience as well. Grandparents came from Ireland, and I have yet to go there. But I feel like maybe I'm a little closer to going there after talking to them and hearing what it's like for them, a day-to-day life for them. So I really look forward to trying to make the trip next time. And I don't know how you guys put it all together. That was quite a week from morning, noon, and night. And we just jumped in and out. You guys, I think Ed, he was there for every step of the way. So I don't know, thank you very much. I've never, a lot of good things come from this town, but this is just something else that I've never seen in 20 some odd years. It was wonderful. Thank you very much for everyone's hard work.
Karen?
Yeah, I will echo what they said, but knowing how much went before that week that went so seamlessly, I hope everyone appreciates how much goes into it beforehand, and in addition to everyone on the committee that did such an outstanding job, and it was a great connection to make, I can't wait to continue speaking with all of the officials that came. But I know that you'll probably mention, but I wanted to, on behalf of the board, also acknowledge that the staff here in Town Hall that supported you, Lorraine and Michelle, and even Jim, all work so hard. And it really showcases what our community can do when we put our mind to something. So it was terrific, and you should all be congratulated.
Yeah, the events were just top-notch. When they got back to Ireland, I bet they slept for 48 straight hours. They were exhausted. Every event was better than the next, and just the hard work that all of you put into it, it really showed off, and it really was an excellent week of time for them. I know they loved it. We all got to know each, some of them pretty well, and they loved it, and you guys had fun at it. We had fun at it. It was really win-win for everybody. And again, thank you to all the other people that participated, donated, food, and donated time, and donated all these things to make it go right. It was a community effort, and you guys really pulled it all together and made it work, so thank you.
Brenda, we want to turn it over to the chair.
Thank you. Thank you all. It was a great pleasure for us to do this. Every event, every moment of the entire week was planned meticulously to show off Scituate, to fulfill the charge that you gave us when the committee was activated. And we went through the entire charge and made sure that every single part of it was met, and it was. Even the bus rides had purpose. We all chatted with each other and established, deepened the partnership that had begun. Much came from it. There is already talk of an exchange with the schools. They're talking in Skibbereen, they're talking in Scituate. They're talking at the Art Center in Skibbereen. They're talking in Clonakilty, which is the first autism-friendly town in Ireland. And a garden club they're arranging tours for garden club. Much has happened from this. I think something that really hit home to me was that it was an entire community putting itself forward. It was the town government, the school governance, the community at the football game. They were absolutely astounded by that. The Chamber of Commerce as well, hosting a breakfast for them. The little shops in Scituate, as the people went in, they were offered a discount, they were welcomed. So our best foot was put forward. To me, I knew it was a huge success because I realized the County Council of Cork has a business partnership with the town outside Shanghai in China. It has a business partnership with Quincy, with Miami, with the state of Maine, and several other places. And as they left, they said, we have a partnership you know about in China. You know the whole state of Maine, we have a business partnership. But Brenda, this is family. And I think that's how they felt about it, and I think that's how we feel about it. A lot of the business partnerships are looking for the huge complex around Cork City. They aren't interested in the little towns in West Cork, and we are. And they got that idea from us, and I think I have great hopes for the partnership. And the committee, I would like to have our committee to stand up because each one of them contributed. You thought it was flawless. The glitches that were happening were extraordinary. And just a person was called and it was taken care of. So by the time it happened, it looked very smooth. But each one of them was fabulous. And I would be remiss if I didn't again acknowledge Lorraine and Michelle, that they were fabulous to us. And we have been asked by the Irish delegation to present a gift to you. And we had a lithograph on silent auction at the Barker Tavern, and they exceeded the highest bid and asked us to present it to you and to the people of Scituate, and to ask you to have it displayed so that all the citizens could see it. It is a sheep farm on the coast of Ireland. It was generously presented to us by Kevin Callanan and his wife, and so we made a good deal of money on it, and the council asked us to give it to you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Wonderful.
Very nice.
And we have another small gift from us. We just, it was a great picture, and we thought it would look better here so that everyone could see it. It's a very happy picture of the welcome ceremony at the Yacht Club.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
Thank
That was
you so
very, very
much.
Very thoughtful.
Yes, would you flip it around, Ed?
Ed, you might want to,
So it has the selectmen and the delegation and me.
That's cool.
that's great. We will. We'll be very, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, committee man.
Thank you for your support, and the best is yet to come.
It is. Well, thank you very much, all of you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Looking forward to the next one, all right?
Italy.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes,
about
John.
Our group? Brenda was given the honor of being invited by the Consul General of Ireland to a meeting this past Saturday at the Irish Cultural Center. And people and members of different Irish groups throughout the entirety of New England, from as far away as Burlington, Vermont, Portland, Maine, all came to get together. And it started at 9 o'clock. I happened to be invited just in another capacity through the AOH and the sister city. But it went from 9 o'clock till 9 at night. And Brenda spoke on a committee panel about the sister city project. So Scituate is now known to more Irish organizations around New England than it ever was before, number one. Number two, this past Friday and Saturday, a reporter from the Irish Times flew up from Washington, D.C. to do a write-up and an article about the most Irish town in America, Scituate, Massachusetts. And she met with Brenda, had lunch at the Mill Wharf with members of our committee, went to the Mossing Museum, and got a chance to stay in our town overnight at the inn down the harbor, and met with some members of our committee, and really got a feel for the town. And she's in the process right now of writing an article. It's going to come out in about 2 weeks' time, that it's going to be in the Irish Times featuring our town. And so the publicity to our town, because of all of this, is really starting to build and build and build.
And the Irish Consul General in Boston also invited us to apply for an Irish immigrant grant from the Irish government. And they're going to help us write it, so we...
So what would that entail?
Well, we
Brenda?
haven't talked about it yet. Our next meeting's November
Okay.
13th.
So be there. We'll
But
listen to it.
the
All right.
possibility is to do a South Shore Irish Heritage Trail that would include our Mossing Museum and the St. John Brigg Memorial. And each town could nominate one part of the trail. It would bring tourism to the towns, to shop, to eat, and all of that. And for us, it would be very little effort to include the Mossing Museum, which is already there. It's
Right.
spectacular. It would just be manning that to have it open more hours. So that's one thing to do. And we have a couple of others. One, perhaps more in the future, is to mimic the West Cork Food Festival, a taste of West Cork, and having that a taste of the South Shore. And having, because in West Cork, they have, how many towns involved in the food festival? 39 or something like that. And they have various activities. It would take a lot of investigating to do, but could be very possibly part of the South Shore. So Scituate would be in the lead for those activities, and that could be supported by the Irish government.
Wow. Great. We'll look forward to hearing back after the 13th.
Yeah,
Good.
right, any way we can support in that, in completing that, let us know, the grant, that's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
John.
you.
Thank you all very much.
Pat. Thank you. Siobhan, thank you. All right, so now, I guess we have to go on to the next topic.
More fun.
Property tax exemptions. Now, Joe, how are you going to beat that topic we just had? You got any gifts you're going to share with us? You going to say rates are going down, or?
Quite Irish.
Well, Joe, good evening, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Tough to beat. I'm not here with any gifts, unfortunately, other than hopefully good news for seniors and widows and other people affected by these proposed changes. If you want me to jump right into it, Article 10 and 11 are very closely related. Article 10 addresses Clause 17 exemptions for the elderly, widows, or minors who own property and meet certain guidelines, ownership guidelines, age guidelines, but the one area that the town can adjust is what I call the means test. Some exemptions have both an asset and income test. This particular exemption, it's a $175 exemption. It only has an asset test. And the only option the town has to increase this is the law before you, which is minimal, unfortunately. It's the CPI, which for this year, if this article is adopted, would increase the asset requirement for an applicant from $40,000 up to $41,000, so it would increase to 2.5%. But then it would keep increasing every year, and that's the goal. If you look at other towns that have adopted this law a few years earlier, it's making progress, and that's helping to keep up with the times. And jumping quickly to 11, because it is so closely related, if 11 were to be adopted, we would lose 12 out of the 17 Clause 17s that were granted last year, only because these new 41Cs, which are also elderly exemptions, would be more attractive. And we would have people who got the 175 exemption last fiscal year actually get the $500 exemption under Article 11. So last year for Clause 17s, we had 17. For Clause 41Cs, we only had 7, which is, it's really low. But look at what we're going to as far as the income and asset tests. For a single applicant, we're going from 13,000 up to 20,000, which is still extremely low. And for a married couple, from 15 to 30,000. And that's the maximum allowed, without adopting another section of law, which basically Article 10 is, but we couldn't do both at the same time. So the idea was to give the biggest bang for the buck right now, and then hopefully bring forward the CPI adjustment next year, and have that keep increasing over time. Another thing that...
So basically, you're indexing annual to the CPI, so that every year it keeps going up by 2.5%, thereabouts.
For Article 10, yes. For Article 11, no. We couldn't do both this time around. So this...
Article 11, we're just raising it, and then next year we'll index it to the CPI.
Exactly. We'll do a two-step on that, but
Okay.
right away, there's a huge door opening, not only because of the means test, the income and asset, but also because we're dropping the age from 70 to 65. So my prediction is we're going to go from 7 up to nearly 50 people that will qualify for this.
Okay.
$500 exemption, which is nothing to sneeze at. It will help a lot of people. And I do think the Clause 17 will be reduced significantly the $1,000 increase isn't going to mean much now, but it could help keep the people who don't qualify for the higher 41C, help keep pace with their assets as they possibly grow, whatnot. And Article 12, another great option out there for seniors, which is the tax deferral. It's basically a no closing cost equity loan on your property. Right now, we only grant 10 exemptions a year, tax deferral exemptions, averaging about 60, 70,000 a year. And that money is paid back with 8% interest annually, but it's very difficult to qualify.
Why is it at 8%? Is that statutory?
That's statutory.
Is that
and-
maxed, or is that just a minimum, or is it,
That's the maximum
Period.
under the statute, but it can be adjusted.
but who has the power to adjust at the
Town
town?
meeting.
Town meeting.
Yeah.
That's something we should think about trying to adjust.
It's actually,
We just took 3 of the most basic ones for this town meeting. I think Joe had 2 pages of options, but we thought we'd walk before we run, take some of the basic ones and
makes
see
sense.
what kind of impact they have.
Yeah.
And then kind of cherry pick as we go forward and try to provide more relief.
Yeah, that would make sense.
right.
I mean, I'm sure when they put 8% in, that was probably decent, or, when interest rates were like 8, 9, 10%, but I'm like, at this point, it's higher than the norm, although it's beginning to catch up. Sorry to interrupt.
No, not at all. The idea was obviously to open the door, get as many new people in as possible.
Yep.
Obviously, the interest has come up during conversations when we counsel people. But the lien that's placed on the property is what's the biggest deterrent to get, or, convince people who really could benefit from the tax deferral to apply for a tax deferral. There is a lien placed on the property to protect the town's interest, but there is no collection process. They're not considered, behind in their taxes. It becomes due when the property is transferred, And I know a lot of times we'll bring in family members, that say, oh, my children won't want me to do this. Bring them in, let's talk. And once in a while, we will be able to help these people out, because it's, if it's a matter of putting food on the table versus paying your taxes, that's when this should be considered.
Right.
Absolutely. Some of the obstacles are, well, one is $40,000 in income. Raising it to $58,000, which this article would do, will help a great many people be able to qualify for this. The other obstacle is we have to be in first position with our lien. So a lot of the small local banks are willing to do that. And so that's just something an obstacle that we have to address on a case-by-case basis. But I really do want to thank Jim and Nancy for everything. I mean, they get the credit, along with the Board of Assessors actually brought this up and put it on my plate early on in my, illustrious career here, starting back in January. But it was something they wanted me to bring up, and I think at the same time, Jim had already asked for surveys and things, and, this and that. The Board of Assessors voted tonight to unanimously support all 3 of these articles.
Good.
Strongly support.
The tax deferral, I don't want to say good thing, but the flexible part of the tax deferral, you can defer all, you can defer a part, you can defer 1 year and not defer the next year. So if you're having a particularly bad year, or you need to put a roof on or something, you can defer your taxes for that year, use the money someplace else, and then not defer them again. So it's entirely up to the homeowner how much they want to defer, how they want to defer it. So it's not for everybody, but again, when you look at the income levels, we're helping the people who really, when you look at those income levels, you say, how are they getting by?
So how does that work? Assume, for the sake of argument, they defer for 2 years' worth of taxes. Then they say, we don't want to do that anymore. That amount that they deferred continues to accrue with interest until they end up selling it,
Or until they pay it off.
or they pay it off.
Yeah.
Right. It's straight line, not compound. So
Gotcha. It's not a bad option. That's actually a good idea.
And they can adjust it every year. And also, what's nice about the tax deferral, you can get that along with any other exemption. So you're only typically allowed to have one exemption. How, the tax deferral is the, the alternate to that. You can still qualify for the $500 exemption, so that comes off the top of your taxes due, and you can defer the rest or any portion thereof. So we are going to do workshops. We're going to try to spread the word as much as possible, whether or not these articles are adopted, but hopefully they will be supported
See
and
if you can get a
adopted.
push piece, something that you can put out there to explain, maybe with the assessors, just to say, the board, this is what we're doing, because some people think it's Greek, and I'm like,
Well,
no,
that's-
actually, you begin to realize there's a huge benefit for a lot of people out there who may not be able to financially, who are
Yeah.
struggling and.
When you think a tax
stressing out.
assessor, you don't think of help.
Right, right.
But hopefully we can change that. And there is, it's important to the board, it's important to the administration to get the word out and help as many people as possible.
Questions from the board, Tony?
Could you just explain to me, you said you talked to local banks. What, you don't need their blessing.
No. With a tax deferral, you have to be in first position. So if there's a mortgage on the property, say a reverse mortgage or an equity line of
Yeah,
credit,
right.
those banks would have to subordinate themselves to the lien that the town would put on. The larger
No.
banks don't do that.
I didn't think I thought the towns came first no matter what.
With regular taxes.
All right, okay.
Under
All
a
right,
normal
okay.
circumstance, we have an underlying first position lien.
Right,
I think it's federal, state, then us. But when you enter into a contract, there's a question on the recovery agreement that says, is there anybody else that has an interest in this property? And even if it was a relative, but typically it's a bank, they would have to say they give permission. And by giving permission to put this lien on, we jump in front, so that protect the town's interests.
Okay.
So that's where we do hit a snag sometimes. But, and it seems to be the smaller banks, especially if I can get them on the phone, and equally, if there's a lot of equity in the home, the less risk, the better the chances that they'll subordinate to this.
Karen, any questions?
No, that's great. Great work.
Well, good. Now, do we need a motion for it all, or just this, we're just talking about the articles? That's it.
It's on the article.
So you're going to get up at town meeting and talk about this, Joe, right? Front and
If
center.
I'm awake, I'll talk about it, absolutely. Put me on early, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Tell the Board of Assessors, we appreciate it. These are 3 great articles that I think will benefit the citizens, so thank you.
Very good, thanks.
Good idea.
We'll be back in the spring with some tweaking and some other stuff that we'll look at.
Great.
Thank you, sir.
All right, moving on to a 7:50 discussion vote of the Library Foundation, Twilight at the Library, private donor special event. Good evening, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
So, Twilight at the library.
That's just a name. Yeah, so we're just basically asking for, put in an event application to essentially have a 2-hour wine and cheese gathering at the library on a Sunday evening after it closes. And, with the hopes of being able to, the history of this is that we have had, as you know, for the last 5 or 6 years, they've been doing wine and cheeses before the library was built or before the construction was approved, for years, to try and get people, introduce them to the concept of the library and, hopefully get them to contribute to the capital campaign. And now that, so we had a generous neighbor, Peter and Barbara Roberts, have agreed to, host one of these wine and cheeses. And he said, it's really, he was a reluctant donor at one point, and what sold him is when he went into the library for the gala, and then bumping into Les and myself, and, seeing all these people that have been kind of charging the library. But he said, the library sells itself, so it seems kind of crazy to try and do this in someone's house and say, but we need you to support the library. And he said, if we can do it in the library, you can say, look, this is why we need your support, and this is why this is such an integral building for the entire community. So we're hoping to try that and see how it goes. And in this particular case, the Roberts are inviting, there's a whole neighborhood group of people who have not yet contributed to the campaign that we're hoping to hit. And that's the other goal in this, is that, over the years, there's 13 of us, and you can only hit so many people. And there are a lot of people in town we feel like we haven't had a chance to connect with. And so that hopefully if this works, we can do it maybe on, one or two other occasions. And this is not by any means limited to any particular group of people. So if anyone out there, I'm going on record, wants to host, help host and bring in another group of neighbors or friends in support of the library, we would be happy to work with them on that.
Good, good.
And is this open to anybody?
It's not, in the sense that, we're trying to, the Roberts have agreed to host, some wine and some appetizers. It's not a big dinner, it's not a gala, it's not an event, and for the privilege of coming in, you get the privilege of being asked to donate to the capital campaign. So they're sending invitations only from the standpoint of, they need to know how many people and how, they're gonna have some wine and some appetizers and how many and who's gonna be there. But it is open, so if anybody would like to be invited or would like to have a friend invited, we're just in the process of sending invitations out right now. So it is not open to the public, but it is open.
That makes sense.
Tony?
Have to go back and get more wine.
Great idea.
Karen, I'll leave the last word to you. Question?
Thank you, I appreciate it. No, the work is tremendous. I was in the library today, and I saw I hadn't seen, if you go in the lobby now, there's a sort of, a thermometer of how they're getting close to their goal, but it's made out of books. It's very cool, so.
Yeah, Joe McNally and Les Paul worked on that. It's an acrylic box, kind of, and you stack books to hit the goals, and it's very cool, actually, and it's been some fun.
So, may I make a motion?
Absolutely.
Move to approve a special event permit to Ginny Ayers Library, Scituate Library Foundation for Twilight at the library on October 28th, 2018, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m.
Motion by Ms.
Second.
Canfield, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Fun.
Yeah.
We'll be reporting back. Yes.
All right, now we're going to move on to a discussion vote, 3A Manlot Road intersection. And Jim, you listed here. I know this was in discussion, or this was in response to a walk-in 2 weeks ago that we were confronted with, and of course, I think I'm the one, along with the board, said, why don't we put this on the agenda to discuss Manlot intersection, and...
Should be your name next to it, not
I
mine.
was going to let you start off, Jim, and see,
I mean, very briefly, the board, we did have the walk-in, the board asked for the accident data, which Deputy Thompson provided you. There are significant accidents there, different times of day, mostly during the day. It was looked at as part of the public safety complex, but only in regards to the public safety complex. I guess the original design had the trucks coming out closer to the intersection, so they were looking at signalizing the intersection, and then when they moved that further away, it was determined that signalizing the intersection was not necessary for the public safety complex. So the question then remains, does the board want to pursue trying to signalize that intersection? If you want to pursue it, we would petition the state, Mass Highway, DOT, to do the study and install a traffic light at that location.
Perfect, thank you. I'm happy, I'm obviously in favor of doing just that. I'm happy to explain to the board my reasoning for it, and I'm happy to start with it, or unless somebody wants to say. So, my reason for doing it was, obviously, the information just for the past 10 years, I think clearly demonstrate that this intersection is dangerous. There are a number of accidents or collisions that are occurring there. I didn't see in the data that was provided the fact that there was a death, a fatality, and I think it goes back to 2001, what limited research I was able to kind of find out. And my understanding, when we said, and we were promoting the public safety building, was that we were going to have a traffic light there at the intersection. I've talked to a number of people on the west side coming out of Manlot, and they were asking for it. And, I for some reason, was not aware that it was not a part of the project. And I have to say, knowing the project's completed, I actually thought, what's the deal with the traffic light? Because I thought it was going to be put up there. That being said, my feeling is that, it may slow traffic down, but that's 3A is slowing traffic down anyways. You got, traffic lights over in Cohasset. It is a beautiful green belt. Maybe the speed has to be reduced. I'm all in favor of saying slow the traffic down, petition the highway department, not the highway, the Department of Transportation, but specifically State Highway, whatever it is, to say lower the speed limit, put a traffic light up there, because I think it's going to save. I think what the problem is that when somebody comes either north or south, and they're stopping to take a left or right off of 3A, vehicles behind them are coming around the side, and what's happening is if there's vehicles coming off the side roads, they're going to get broadsided. And, I think the data shows that it's dangerous. Then we have the data just for the month of September, and there are 3 car collisions, 2 in one weekend. So my feeling on it is that I think it's absolutely necessary. I know it slows traffic down, but my push is to petition, whether it's the governor, and then asking, the State Highway Department to do something there, get our elected officials, Senator O'Connor, Joan Moschino, and frankly, whoever wins the representative race this November, to get involved to petition to get this done, because I think it's going to save, potentially, lives. So that's my position on it. I don't know what the rest of the board feels, but that's the way I see it.
What you described happened to me. I was pulling out a man lot, and the guy was turning right, and the guy went around, and he hit the front of my car. So it's a terrible intersection, and anyone that lives there knows you got to kind of wait forever or take your life in your own hands sometimes. So I support it. I think it's a great idea. It's going to probably take a while to have it done, but that's a really tough intersection. The only thing I'd add is I really think we should reconsider whether we put that sign over there, because I think that's just going to be another distraction in front of the public safety building until we get a light there. I think if we got a light there, it may be something to reconsider with traffic stopping, but you don't need somebody looking at a sign coming into that thing at 50 or 60 miles an hour, so I agree.
Are you going to make it a blinking light, or are you going to make it a full light?
Hold on one second. Well, rest of the board, and I'll.
Good, Karen.
Jim, could you just walk us through what the process is? I know that we would petition the state, but then what happens?
Yeah, they would have to do traffic studies out there, how much traffic, feasibility would have to be engineered, and then you have to decide who's going to pay for it.
One thing we had is we had a traffic study 3 years ago, and could we actually contact that study, whoever did it, I don't know who it was, Horsley, Whitman, or whoever was there, no, might not have been, begins with a P maybe. But whoever it was, just ask them to come back and update the information.
We can find out who did it, yeah.
That might be an easier, cost-effective way.
Summary in the backup of the company.
Yeah, it's in there. Do you have a sense of how long that typically, the process can take? I know it can vary, but.
I mean, you got to get first of all, they have to go to do it, then they got to get the resources to do the study, do the traffic counts, then they got to get the money to do the light. I mean, it's a multi-year process.
So I would, to your point about our officials, to the community,
Well-
should we go forward with this?
Well, if we can get an idea what it would cost, then you rely on your legislative delegation to put it into a budget, or put it into a transportation bond, or put it in someplace where it's going to move faster.
Okay.
Or we could put a cable camera on it, use cable funds, because it seems to be a lot of money in the cable account. Have people live stream the intersection. But it's a long process to go through the whole process. Mass DOT moves at a glacial pace. Just for an example, the Queen Anne's Corner reconstruction project in Norwell took 19 years from filing to funding. So
Big improvement, though.
yeah, it took forever, but it's a multi-year process. Once we get an idea what it's going to cost, I would go to the legislative delegation, say, put it in a budget and get us a direct appropriation to do it.
Okay.
I just think it's going to be a little trickier than just the intersection, because the public safety building's going to have control over that. You can't, I wouldn't think you'd come down, hit a red light, and then just get going.
Well, you can install what's called an Opticom system, Sean, which
If they had the run.
police, the fire trucks have it, and they push it, and that gives them a green light and gives everybody else a red light in the direction they're coming, so they can trip those signals now.
And I've seen it. When you come out of Brockton, you're heading down Center Street, and what happens is there's a fire station, it's heading to Whitman, and they actually have a traffic light starting, and then you go a little bit further, there's a fire station. Literally, right next to it's another traffic light. So,
As long as they have some
I
control
know
over
that
it.
they could have control to get the
The
system.
Opticom's pretty slick.
And
Cleared out.
I did not think it was going to work, but I am, I'm impressed what happened in Greenbush. So, I mean, the state might come back and say, a little rotary. little roundabout. I mean, there seem to be popping up. Isn't there one in Kingston now, or Duxbury, Kingston?
Duxbury has one.
Okay, so the issue with that would be,
wet
you'd
in
probably have
that
to
corner.
do, yeah, it's wet, and you'd have to do some land takings to get enough space to put it.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't want to go down that road.
Yeah, the traffic light would be the easiest thing, signalization would be the easiest thing.
Just one, to answer
gonna
your
get
question, I think we're looking at a full-fledged light for it. The only thing that I'm thinking, if it's gonna take years, which more than likely it will, what can we do in the interim? Can we put a blinking light? Can we reduce the speed limit? Can we put warning signs? What, what?
Still the state.
Yeah,
Yeah,
to
I mean,
reduce
it's
the
a
speed
state,
limit,
but-
they come out and they do a speed count,
That's right. Sometimes.
and then it's 90% of the average or something, and it almost always goes up.
That's right.
From what it is. What we can do is start doing some real directed enforcement on that stretch. It's a pretty fast stretch because it's pretty straight, so you start getting the police out there and letting people know, and that'll slow them down. But aside from that, you can't just signalize it or put a stop sign up. And to answer this woman's question, it's probably going to be a signalized light, but the new lights, they can be signalized during the day, and then at a certain time, they can go to a blinking light when the traffic is down, or really, they can do whatever you want. They have actuated signals, so it'll measure the traffic backing up on man lot and trigger the light when it gets to a certain point. They're pretty slick now, so we can have all kinds of different options.
Do we have any authority if we wanted to put a sign that said, no passing on the shoulder? Can we
I don't think you do.
expedite something like that, or request something like that on a more expedited basis?
Yeah, it's illegal anyways, even without the sign.
I know, well, but if that's part of the problem in that spot, if we could at least,
They don't pass on the shoulder, they pass,
But as a person's taking the right, they go around them, and
onto
that's
the
what
left.
happens. You put as many signs as you want, but you can't legislate out stupidity. That's just people being stupid and not being careful. It is.
well, whatever it takes, let's start the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll send a letter to DOT, we'll copy the governor, we'll get it to Pat and to Joan, and,
Questions from the audience, anybody?
Yeah, I just have one question. I wanted to point out that there was another accident on Thursday.
Name and name.
Sorry, Stacy Hayes here, 37 Surfside Road.
Thank you.
I was the walk-in last week. In addition to the 3 accidents in September, there was another one actually on Thursday. And, we may or may not be in town beyond, the period of time when this comes to fruition. My daughter, who was in the accident, will be graduating Scituate High. We may stay. We don't know if we like you guys or not. But what can we do to expedite this on the state level? I mean, would pleading to our legislators, personal police, because I know that there's been several people in town that have been impacted by accidents, including one woman I spoke to who had a lifelong injuries as a result. She still has problems because of her neck and back, and we just want to, light a fire if possible.
the fastest way to do it is get an earmark in the state budget, which is in the spring. And right in there somewhere that, there's a line for the Department of Transportation to spend $60 million, and there's provided that this much be spent here, and this much be spent here, and this much be spent here, and your state rep or your senator puts on the line, provided that X amount be for the installation of a traffic light at Route 3A and Man Lot Road in the town of Scituate.
How do I get in the loop on the communications between the town of Scituate and the state level so that I can further push the issue? Does that make sense?
I think what you're hearing from the board is we think it's a priority and we're going to
Yeah.
push it as fast as we
You
can.
do,
I
yeah.
think the way you can participate is talk to your local reps.
Because then the
and
reps
see-
are going to say, they're going to look, is there any engineering? How are we going
Yeah.
to spend the money? Well, you don't have the engineering, how you can put the money out there? And how do you know, how much is it going to cost? So it's a matter of like, it's process. If it were town-owned, we'd have our own engineers engineer it, go out,
Yeah.
put it in the budget, we could probably put it up within a year. But the problem is now with the state, and of course, every town's doing it, and then, we're getting a new representative, the question is, they're not both going to be new, whoever it is, and then, where are they in the pecking order? Are they part of the leadership? Are they going to be able to get some money? And, sadly, it's not as expedited as it should. Frankly, I'd like to be able to say to the governor and the department, what's the Department of Transportation, the Highway Department, what do they call it? The
Mass DOT.
Yeah.
Mass DOT, okay, Mass DOT, to say, will you do it? And let me tell you, it can take years.
Yeah.
With them. So that you're right about, how do you light a fire, and the question is, I don't know the answer to that one. I know how to light a fire here, but I don't know how to light a fire there.
We've actually, we had some progress. Of course, Lynch did some stuff for us in regards to Lyme legislation, so we'll reach out to their office again until we've got somebody.
Well, that's the federal.
We actually had Lynch step in on some state stuff.
If he could, that would be helpful, because he is a part of our district, yeah. So,
Good.
thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, Andrea Hunt, 66 Man Lot. We're at that intersection all the time, of course, because we just live down the road. One question that I had, until this is done through the state, and I know that is a process that takes a while, I was here when they did the traffic study 3 years ago and spoke to the issue. And that particular traffic study seemed to think, after they had left a camera at that intersection for a week or so, that that intersection worked very well. I disagreed with that at the time, but that's what their traffic decision was. That was before the public safety complex was up and running and had any issues with emergency vehicles coming in and out. What I'm wondering is if the town where Manlock Road is not a state road, is there any way that any kind of a flashing emergency light that could be connected with the emergency light when vehicles come in and out of there on Manlock Road, so that those people would know to stop and stay? And I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but you've got to, you'll have an access for the police cars to come in and out on Manlock Road. And if we've got cars at traffic time backed up on Manlock Road and there's an emergency, those police cars can't get out because there are cars sitting there. And if they can get out, they put their light on and they squeeze through the cars. But people coming from the other way, if they see that the emergency light is coming on and the vehicles are coming out and they're in a rush to get to work, they'll try and jog through the intersection before the fire engine comes out of the station to get into that intersection, and they'll try and dart across so that they won't have to wait. And I'm just thinking if there was just like one of those little emergency lights, like a strobe light, that just kind of goes like that on the public safety complex, and maybe on the other side of 3A over by where that water building is, maybe those lights, if they came flashing, would be just enough to make people understand, and if there was a sign, stop in emergency when flashing, kind of like our school lights do, maybe that would make them stop so that they would not be trying to jog through that intersection when there's a backup. And that would be on our roads, and it's just a little thing that we might be able to do until the state comes through with putting a full light in.
Just along those lines, are any of these accidents that are recorded at the same time one of the police or fire trucks are leaving? Or is this just when they are
It doesn't give
idle?
us that.
I haven't heard of that.
Right.
I think what she's,
I know what she's saying, that helps, it's gonna leave them back, west and east,
right,
if they would look.
if they know that there's an
Right, right.
emergency vehicle
Right,
leaving.
right.
As far as I know, I don't think that an accident has actually been caused by that, but I have witnessed many near accidents when that situation has happened. And a couple of times, the emergency lights have not functioned properly, and that happened to me one day. I thought that the fire engine was sitting in the driveway testing its lights, because they do that sometimes, and the emergency light on 3A did not come on. And I was coming down 3A, making an approach to Manlock Road from north to south. And I saw the emergency vehicle with its flashing lights, but I thought they were just testing, so I continued going. And then the fire engine came out, blasting his horn, and I immediately ran off the road and pulled in by the state forest there so that he could get by me. But our emergency lights never even came on when he was coming out.
I'm take a look at that,
Yeah.
Kevin, or find out, just make sure that they are functioning, because that would be a,
It's the first I've heard of it, as far as
Just
I know. It had
have 'em check
function.
into it.
They might have missed pressing a button, or, I don't know. I've seen them go off and cars go right through there also.
Yeah.
You know, one option, just as we're thinking here is, and it'd be something for traffic safety maybe to consider, is, you know, changing the road, maybe making a one-way on one of the roads, or try to look at other aspects to that effect.
Yeah, it's, you're
There's
Where
no,
Manlock Road
stuck.
is so narrow, that would make sense, because I came before the board, it was a year ago, June, with measurements of Manlock Road, and there's 2 areas as you go down the road near the cemetery area, where there are telephone poles sticking out.
It's
And
pretty tight.
the road is only 16 feet across. And a bus and a fire engine measure almost 19 feet. They're 18 and a half feet across. So if a bus was stopped, letting students off at the end of Pratt Road, and an emergency fire engine was coming down the road, they could not pass. And I'm just terrified that somebody, I had to pull off the road coming home several times into somebody's driveway to let an emergency vehicle pass, especially if there's anybody walking on the road. We've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new houses built on Manlock, and almost all of those houses have got young children in them. So we've got mothers walking up and down the road all the time now with strollers. You're coming up the road and you try and pass somebody and you've got somebody on a stroller or a bicycle, there's just nowhere to go.
Well, one thing we should do, Kevin, you should take a look at the road layout. We might have to expand the road, make it larger.
We've looked at the road, and there was some talk about it, you know, a year or so ago.
Take a look at that as a thought.
We'll keep it in mind and look at it.
Any other questions?
well, a bare minimum, we shouldn't have the bus stop next to that pole. Yeah, it should have it stop.
inside the development.
Do we know, that should be something we should at least notify the school department?
Yeah.
Tell them they should make sure that.
There's 2 spots where you shouldn't stop a bus.
Right.
That's easy to solve.
All right. Well, thank you very much, folks. We are looking into it. Is there a motion for us, maybe just so that we have an action that specifically says what we're going to do here?
Move to petition the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Transportation to install signalization at the intersection of Manlot Road and Route 3A.
Motion by Ms. Canfield.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and let's follow up. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, now let's move on to our next topic, which is the discussion vote on foreshore protection improvement design contract for $144,230. Kevin, good evening. How are you?
Good evening. So, one thing the guys have been working on is just the design engineering with FEMA. We've got some FEMA money that looks like it's coming in, and we've got project worksheets set up for this work. So the next step is to design, engineer, permit, and get this ready to go out to construction. So we put out an RFP and had a couple companies reply to it, and the company that was most advantageous was Applied Coastal Engineering.
So this is the, this is repairing a lot of the storm damage that we've had already.
Storm damage from Nemo in the past, and it's 3,700 feet long from Manhole, Egypt beaches, the engineered cobble mound that's out there. So it'll go into repairing and replacing a lot of the cobble that's moved.
One of the things, I think, Nancy, you provided it for us, right? What I was wanting to know is, like, what is the potential maximum exposure the town has for these storms that we've been attempting to get reimbursement from?
That's our 8:30 discussion.
Not counting Riley, I'd say you're looking at around the area of $12 million.
Okay. All right. Never mind, I see it's later on. I thought it was part of the discussion. Good, we will. We can get it done now, quicker, see? I'm looking at the clock, it says 8:30, I'm asking you a question at 8:30. All right, so Kevin, this is
So the town's
just...
match is 25%, this is 75% reimbursable from FEMA.
And that amount is $144,000.
Correct.
Questions from the board?
Yeah, so we're on the hook for 75%,
25.
Right, 25%, all right, okay, all right. What exactly are they gonna do now that's not done right? What are they gonna do? I mean, the dune or the mound is, are they gonna raise it higher than it is right now?
They're going to restore it to what it was. Not necessarily, this contract isn't to increase it, raise it, or anything else. It's to bring it back to the conditions it was. And a lot of the money, if you look in the scope, there's a lot of money in permitting. The tasks were broken down on how they plan on putting it all together.
So they're gonna pull this cobble out of the chain ponds and
No,
put it
we
back
can't
up?
do that. It'll be bringing in new cobble. They don't allow us to remove it from there.
But we couldn't do it right after the storm. Right after storms, we're allowed to do it.
No, you're not supposed to dredge it, but, we
Just build it back.
build it back up.
Okay.
Because at that point, we're kind of in an emergency situation.
Right.
And we're worried about the next tide coming in.
Sure,
We bring it in as tight as we can.
I just thought it was, right now, I thought it was the way it always was. I didn't realize it had, so what are you saying, that the crest of the hill has gone
So
down?
the hill has actually slid, it's moved
Towards the
back in
pond-
some
the
areas,
ponds.
and it's changed its shape. So we'll reestablish a shape and bring it back up and beef it up and build it up stronger.
That's all.
Where are we getting the money to pay for our 25%?
We have two sources. We typically get the $200,000 a year for foreshore protection, and we also have, there was $2 million set aside towards FEMA repairs and other
But
items.
we'd have to borrow that money, the 2 million.
Correct.
So we're going to borrow money to do it, or we're going to use from the 200 grand that we put in
Correct.
the operating budget?
So the 144 is just for engineering and designing?
Correct.
All right, and then any idea of the construction cost, and then are we still only responsible for 25% of that?
Would be responsible for 25% of that. They said the damages totaled, were 724, 144 estimated in this area. And one of the things we've been able to do is take before and after pictures, aerial pictures of how the dunes changed, and we submit that to FEMA. In the process, it's so thoroughly vetted with FEMA on getting the approval for these project worksheets. It's really difficult. Dan was going to come in tonight and talk about it too. It's been one of his pet projects he's been working on for a while to get this money. And he's really gone through the details with them to the nth degree.
So if I heard you right, it's $750,000 just to engineer where to put the stone?
No, it's $750,000 to build it.
To build it as well?
It's 124,000 or 144,000 is for the engineering permitting, the design and construction services.
Okay, but our portion of it is going to be,
25% of that, and then 25% of the 724, or whatever that value comes out to.
the
when it's all-
724 does or does not include that 144?
Does not include. And that number may change as the engineering is completed. It might go up or down.
It says damages total 724, including design and permitting. Is that? Is included, okay.
It could say that, Tony. It was a typo. I was told it was 724 for the estimated damage that was approved.
Okay. So the 144 could include the whole, that'd be our piece for the
It
whole
could,
thing?
yep.
Okay. Okay, well, it's tough to not take advantage of $600,000 of FEMA money. I don't know that that's our top priority, but
Well,
it's not optional, right?
A lot of how we work it with the project worksheets become available. They say the money's available.
Right.
We try to jump on it.
It's hard to say no.
Right.
Okay.
Question?
And given the complexity of getting the reimbursements, is there any way to predict the timetable of when the work would actually begin, assuming everything went well?
It depends to the extent of the permitting. If we have to go through every permitting agency in the Commonwealth, it might take a little longer. If we don't, and we get some permits waived, it'll be quicker.
Okay.
But typically, I'll just use the simple Gilson culverts. How long does it take to get that permitted? That's been over, almost 2 years now permitted. So,
Okay.
Sean?
I would hope it's less than that.
Is it in the backup here, Kevin? Is this company the only one that bid it?
No, there were multiple companies that did it.
Some were non-responsive, I saw.
Some were non-responsive, and there was one other bid from CLE. I think it was for $220.
So this is the low bid, 144.
This is the low bid we were going with, yes.
That's all.
Any questions from the audience? Seeing none, a motion?
Move that the Board of Selectmen award the contract for design, permitting, and construction services to Applied Coastal for $144,230.
Motion by Ms. Canfield, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Vignani. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. For those who aren't watching baseball, it's 8-2, Sox in the 8th inning. Ahead. There you go.
Yes.
The 8th?
8th inning. It's good. That means we can take our time now. Don't have to get home. All right, moving on. Let's go to the update. Actually, no, let's go to the discussion vote Drew Company Sewer Agreement. Brad Washburn, Director of Planning and Development. John Drew, the owner. Good evening, gentlemen.
How are you?
Attorney Galvin, it's good to see you. Robert Galvin, representing, I assume, the applicant here.
Good evening.
Well, good evening, welcome. Brad, why don't you start for us, how's that?
Great. So, a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, we met at your meeting in the library, and we had Drew Company there.
Yep.
We discussed kind of the outline of this sewer connection agreement. So I think we talked about what the components would be in concept, in terms of the grant option and the non-grant option. And I think what they were coming back tonight is to describe kind of rounding out the non-grant option. So just to kind of back up, again, I think the benefits of this project, as we discussed a few times in terms of economic development, affordable housing, development that has the least environmental impact you could have, since it's a redevelopment of an existing parking lot, transit-oriented, et cetera. So the project itself has significant merit. And we also were able to leverage this project into our MassWorks grant application. And in that application, we applied for $2.2 million for the Cedar Point sewer replacement project. So that application's pending. We should probably hear within a month or so. Originally, they had told us end of October. Is the state. They have, I think, over 100 applications, so I wouldn't be surprised if that deadline slipped a little bit. But again, I think we had a very competitive application, great project on that end, great, private partner here as well. So just to kind of go over the two options that would be part of this sewer connection agreement, there was the grant option, which would be, getting the $2.2 million for the sewer project, and then the identified filled infiltration work. Again, that was documented in more detail in the memo that was included in your packet. So that was work targeted at manhole rehabilitation and private service rehabs that would get them to 18,000 gallons per day approximately, which is 20% more than what they would be contributing to the system. So not only would they be carving out capacity for them to connect, but an additional 20%. So again, in that option, that's really a home run. That's money to do the sewer project and carving out 120% of their sewer contributions.
Say that again? So we're getting a grant?
So in the grant option for the sewer connection, we really need a two-track kind of option because we don't know where we're going to land with a competitive grant. So in the grant option, if we're successful in getting the grant, the $2.2 million goes to Cedar Point. savings on money we had already authorized to pay for that project, so that would actually be taken off of the town's kind of budget to fund that project. But in the case that, again, we're leveraging them to get this grant. On our own, we can't go for a MassWorks grant. You have to apply and have a private project partner that meets all the criteria that MassWorks wants to see promoted in the state. And again, that's affordable housing, economic development, and kind of checks all of their boxes in terms of what they want to fund. So they will fund public infrastructure projects to get the kind of private development that kind of extols their stuff. So
What about just capacity?
so capacity, so their project will contribute 15,000 gallons a day to the system. So again, in the
Contribute?
Add to. Nice way to put it.
I like, yep. Increase, yep.
Yeah, increase. So the $2.2 million, again, would carve out more than sufficient capacity to allow their project to move forward.
Well, we don't know what it'll do to Cedar Point, right? We have no idea.
I hope I was told that Cedar Point leaks contribute to 40,000 gallons a day.
Yeah.
40. So if we can fix that, it's
It's going to be a tight system.
I know, but you have, what is?
The system, it's going to be a pressurized system, so there's not going to be any ability for infiltration.
Right. I'm just saying, in the many years we've been doing this, the INI's never
never
produced any savings, or minimal.
Right,
So as documented in the CDM technical report, this was the report that we had focusing on I&I and contributions to the system. This closed system, a force main project, kind of takes a lot of the guesswork out of II replacement. Again, we have kind of a patchwork of things. You have multiple components in the system. You have your main lines, you have your private laterals, you have manholes. So we've, in the past, you're right, done some of those replacements, but not, obviously, since it's a large system, done a comprehensive update to all of those pieces. But at least in Cedar Point, this force main project would literally be a complete replacement, and that's where we've identified 40,000 gallons per day of I&I. So that's, if we get the grant project, could fund that in its entirety, and again, money that was already approved at town meeting could then be used for something else.
Brad, do we have to, let's say to Tony's point, the leaks aren't that bad, do we have to spend the money on Cedar Point? Could we make an improvement in our infrastructure somewhere else if we find it doesn't matter to these guys where what we fix around town?
Yeah, again, what we proposed in the grant was the money would go towards that, and we basically, in our grant narrative, talked about that phase of a sewer capacity restoration, and talked about future phases of a similar project if we continue that same methodology down Oceanside and other tricky areas where really you need to do a wholesale replacement to ensure that you're finally getting this I&I problem resolved.
All right. I just ask. I don't want to slow the process down.
We could use the money that was authorized at town meeting somewhere else. So you could use the grant money for this project and then use the $2.2 million somewhere else for sure.
Right.
The grant money would have to go for this project.
So just two other quick questions, Brett. So does the sewer have the capacity for the 15,000 gallons a day without any improvements?
Well, there's no scenario where they're not doing capacity restoration.
Does the sewer have the capacity for any more on it if nothing, and that's obviously, there's going to be some sort of result from putting $2 million in the system.
Yeah.
But does it have what does it have the capacity for right now?
That would be something I'd have to, talk with Kevin to see exactly the daily flows.
Okay, because
What we're
that's
trying
always,
to do.
we hear different things.
Yeah.
2 years ago, we thought we had a ton of capacity, and then we came to a meeting and we were at 99%, and we don't have any capacity, and now, now we're kind of hedging, well, if this improves, then we do get some capacity, and I love the project. I want it to happen. I just don't want to go down the path again where we're giving something away on something that could happen, then we find out 3 years later it doesn't happen.
I mean, I think on the smaller individual hookups where you get a $14,000 or $16,000 connection fee, you don't really have the the means to make meaningful improvements to make I&I reduction. I think with these larger projects, while they do have larger contributions to the system of sewage, you also get a larger betterment fee or other kind of, I guess you just have a better opportunity to make meaningful improvements to actually carve out capacity. So the point is to really make them neutral, and they're proposing an additional 20% to make sure that they're not adding anything to the system now. So we'd be essentially adding 78 units, would be exactly where we are now in terms, and that's the baseline. That's the non-grant option again, just literally making.
I don't understand what you just said, but let's stick with.
So if they're proposing, if 15,000 gallons per day is coming from their system,
Yeah.
they are proposing to do enough I&I work to take out 18,000 gallons per day. So essentially, they'd be
Right.
a neutral.
Again, I&I work
Yep.
is maybe, and you guys know more about this tight system than I do over there, that maybe it's better than maybe of the past, maybe it's more reality of the future, but, and another question, so the $2.2 million will pay for that total section of, there'll be no expenditure from the town for that?
So
Do
yeah,
that
going
whole
back
tight
to
system
the grant
grant,
option, that
yeah.
would fully fund that project.
Okay.
So on top of that, Drew is proposing $229,000, which would pay for $18,000 worth of, or 18,000 gallons per day of traditional I&I work. And again, jumping back to, you mentioned previous efforts the town has done, there has been lining of some of the mains down in that section. So what the CDM report, the technical report that we just referenced a few moments ago, identified the next things that we need to be doing are manhole rehabilitations and private service line rehabs. So really, that's kind of the belt and suspenders approach, doing the traditional way of lining the main and then going back and doing the lateral improvements and the manhole rehabilitations.
So you said they're going to give another $229,000 to do other work?
Yeah, so again, that 229, using estimates of how much it costs to rehab the manholes and the private service upgrades, gets that 18,000 gallons per day out of the system.
Is that separate from any hookup fees that they pay?
No, again, if they're getting us $2.2 million in a grant that we couldn't get on our own, and they're essentially carving out additional capacity, I think that is the 229 would essentially be their betterment, because again, we're getting significant more benefit than just what we'd get through a traditional connection fee.
So what would the betterment, well, I'll let you go, because that's probably phase two, right?
Non-grant option, so again, that was the grant option, and the non-grant option, again, they do the betterment work, the I&I work as described above. So $229,000 to remove 18,000 gallons per day, doing the manhole and private service rehab work. And then the remainder, going up to $547,000, would be funds to the town to use at the discretion of the sewer and/or DPW department.
And that 547 is the hookup fees?
Yeah, the remainder, the delta between 547 and 229 would just be the remainder of the betterment fee.
So it's not both, it's...
547 is the betterment fee. Again, it's similar to toll, where they had a betterment fee, but money was, at least in theory, being kind of directed towards I&I work. So again, all of this 547 goes for the sewer connection fee, and then the sewer
That would
department.
just be a traditional, it's $16,000 a hookup or whatever it is.
Yeah, and this figure was pegged to the Toll Brothers cost per unit. Again, I think the board saw a benefit in that type of project, the 55 and over, the reduced impact on the schools. I think their project, while this has not had the opportunity to go through planning board yet, I think they'll be talking about some of the same benefits. We have 1 and 2 bedroom rentals. It's really kind of a transit-oriented development that would be, I think, more appropriate for working professionals. It's not going to be family housing. So I think it's going to be a lot of the same benefits that Toll had, all of the benefits that we mentioned at the beginning in terms of affordable housing, transit-oriented, less environmental impacts.
Can I monopolize for 2 more seconds?
2 more, here you go.
So the 229 and the 547, are they together or are they one number? Is it only 547 of which 229 is, or is 229 and 547?
No, so grant option is 547. That's
the non-grant option. So you get
non-grant option.
547 and 229 of it you're suggesting would go to the,
Yep.
okay. And you're assuming the discount that we gave Toll Brothers we would give to them?
That's what we're, again, this is the proposal in front
That's
of
what I'm
you.
asking.
Yes.
So that's saying that we're going to apply whatever discount we give to Toll Brothers to this project as well.
Yes.
I'm done.
Karen?
I don't think there's anything else to ask, Tony.
I don't know the answer yet, so ask something.
No, no, actually, you actually did ask all the questions I was going to ask, so.
Sean?
Not right this second, nope.
Okay. Just so that the 547.8, so what would the number be? Forget Toll Brothers, for the hookup then?
Well, based on a meeting of, your last meeting where the fee went up, I think it went up to close to $1 million. Previously, it was like $850 or $900, based on the $14,000 per unit.
And you guys you didn't have permits before that date, right? Is that just the timing of it?
Oh, it's just the timing of, you're talking about based on our increased percentage that we just increased last week.
So it go to
Okay.
850 to $1 million or something?
Ballpark, I think, yeah.
But it still would be 547 prior to our increasing the rates.
547 is the discounted rate for toll.
Yeah, 850 to 900 was what the flat rate would have been under the $14,000 per unit. When it went up to $16,000 per unit at the last meeting,
It's above $1 million.
went up to about $1 million.
I think it's 14,000 per unit, and the discount is 8,300 per unit.
Right, but now the rate is 16.5?
16.
16 even?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm sorry, what was the number you said before that, 83 or something? You said 14 and discounted to 80?
The betterment fee for each sewer equivalent unit is 14,000 per unit, and the current proposed is 83. Per sewer equivalent unit.
Thanks. Well, the best deal's a grant.
For everyone.
Well, let me ask you this, because I know, obviously, I like the project. I definitely do. But when we discounted Toll Brothers, we discounted with an idea that there was going to be some mitigation. And I'm saying if grant option is not on the table, the non-grant option, what's the mitigation that we're looking at? And I only ask that because there was mitigation that they were looking to put aside and to help out. And I guess,
These type of units will contribute, these are the precise type of units that your housing production plan targets for development. So I know we're developing the project, but there's significant public benefit. This gets you further along in your housing production plan, potentially give you some more leverage to deny other projects, things of that nature.
Theirs fall under the two, though. Their project was the over 50 that kind of hit the plan as well. Are we making a decision tonight on what we're charging them?
So I think, and obviously, John, you can speak better to this, at your last meeting that they were at, they've been negotiating with the T, there's an extension, a second extension to December of this year, and that doesn't look likely that there could be another one, so the idea was to come to agreement with the board and then start with planning board prior to the end of this year.
Sorry, I lost my place here.
Brad, would you mind just, I must have been looking at something else. Could you just, in 30 seconds or less, run down the non-grant option? So if they're unsuccessful in getting the grant.
Yep.
All right, because I was reading, just,
I think these
if you don't mind.
Yeah, so if you, I think they describe, I think the work, the actual I&I work might be described in the grant option piece, but basically it's the 18,137 gallons per day worth of I&I work, which is
Right.
229,000 plus money.
Okay.
Basically, up top, in the grant option, we get the grant, and they do this I&I work.
Right.
In the non-grant, it's the I&I work, and then a check to make up the delta, and the delta was to get to the per rate unit that Toll Brothers paid. Again, proposal is that, this project has, a list of benefits, and for those reasons, it's, worthy of a discount.
So let me ask you this. I realize you need to proceed forward. Option, because you're looking to file with planning right now?
Yes.
And just explain to me, why wouldn't you want to start anyways, and then come back to us determining whether or not what the grant option could be? In other words, start your process of application. Option, if the grant comes through, then we know exactly what it's going to be. You're not being stalled in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, the issue really comes down to about $300,000, what we're talking about, with your non-grant option. Why don't we wait to have that discussion when and if it becomes relevant, as opposed to proceeding forward right now with the planning, and then, if you get the grant, we get the grant, then we know everybody's preference is the grant. How does that?
The planning board, it's been a little while now, but I'm pretty sure they expressed a desire to have this squared away before moving forward.
How many times, I anticipate you're going to probably have at least 2 meetings, I would think.
Yeah.
Sometimes 4 or 5, but with the esteemed council here, I think you'll certainly be able to guide you directly and help the board understand. But our next meeting's in 2 weeks. You would line up probably in about 2 weeks, earliest probably.
We were told to come to see you first. That they didn't want to, they liked, we showed them the project, and it actually has some pretty lively discussions about the project, the layout of the project, the plaza. I mean, we got into some detail on it, and we owe them now another rendition on the exterior of the project with some more clapboard and various things like that, following their direction. But we got that deep into it, and literally how you would cross the street, how you'd walk through it, and various things. So I mean, there was pretty thorough discussions. However, at that point, they were informal. But at that point, they said, there's an issue with the town, clearly, on sewer, and we would like to have you get your approvals from you, basically, on the selectmen, before they would they wanted to take up the review of the project. So that's why we did it in this way, shape, and form.
It's just me, I'm thinking aloud here. My preference would be to say to the planning board, the board supports the project, and the board is not going to say no to the project. Sewer and water, the commissioner's issues. They should take a look at the project as a whole within the confines of their authority, and in the interim, depending on how long it's going to take, whether it's going to take a month or 6 weeks, depending on the review process, we hope to hear back from Mass Grants to be able to see what that option is. And if it's the option, that's the option everybody wants. If it's not, then we'll have you back in front of us.
Okay.
Either way, we'll have you back in front of us once we know the
If
answer.
you file with the planning board now, when's their next meeting that you'd be on the agenda?
It's at least 3 weeks out.
So we're 2 weeks out.
So I think that would give us ample time to figure out what the result is. But my preference in saying is that you're going to, my position is, I see the value of this. It's smart growth, it's what we wanted. This is really beneficial in many forms. And so it's just a matter of dollars at that point. So I don't think the planning really needs to know what the Board of Sewer Commissioners are going to do, other than you're going to get sewer. So they need to focus on
They're
the
going to
other.
want to know that definitively, and without that indication from you all, at least in terms of ability to connect, we won't have that project. So we certainly need at least the expression of support.
How does the board feel?
Would it be possible to, and would it satisfy the planning board to take a vote on that the board supports negotiating in good faith the connection fees, and vote on the,
Well,
I mean, they're
what if
concerned
we were
we're not
to
gonna
vote
give
on the
permission.
connection?
Their concern is going to
amount.
be that, is there capacity, and if there's some discretionary capacity that the selectmen have charge of, will that discretionary capacity be available to us to develop this project?
So I think it would only be the question of whether or not the board supports connection, and then we can talk about, but that's my thought. It's up to what you're thinking, what you guys thinking.
Well, one thing there's two issues here. There's money and there's capacity. So, you want to get it for $550,000 because that's what we gave Toll Brothers. We have every right to charge you what the rates just went up the other day, which is probably $1.1 million. So there's $400,000 or $500,000 worth of delta there, which we need, might I add, to help our water system and to help everything else. We could even charge nothing for this and triple the water rate and use the money that way. But, so you would have to decide whether you were going to do the project or not do the project based on the $500,000 delta. Are you saying that there's a chance that you wouldn't do it if you didn't get the discount at Toll Brothers?
There's a chance we would not do the project if you charge us that full amount, definitely.
Okay.
Not unquestionably, yes.
I expected you to say that. And then the other thing is, what is the, what is the capacity? Because as we all know, if we give them 15,000 gallons a day, that's 15,000 gallons a day that isn't going to somebody else. Of course, the investment that you're making is going to make it up. And I love the project. I want the project to happen. I need to just understand those numbers a little bit so that I know what the delta is. Like if, if we're banking 100% that we're going to get the return on the I&I, and it's going to put us over the capacity of the plant, if we don't get it, then I just have to understand what we're playing with there.
Yeah, again, I'd have to talk with DPW for exact
Yeah,
figures.
yeah,
but
and
we're
I know you don't know that right now, but I just need to know that, if we only get 10% of this I&I, then the capacity of the plant is over what it can do, and we have big problems. You understand?
No, I totally understand.
I think it's better to hear from them, but I think we were told that there was capacity for this project in town. But you need
Yeah, I need to hear, and I hope there is.
When's the next date for, if you were to apply, when would the next date for the planning board be?
They'd probably be a month out, because they'd need our peer review to check out all their traffic and all their, stormwater and stuff like that, so probably a month. I don't know. I think they just met last week, so probably
I'm asking because our next meeting is the 6th of November. If you were to apply, you're not going to see them between now and November 6th. And then put it back on the agenda and discuss it. We get the final numbers, so the board has everything. Does that work?
I think that's...
That way you don't lose time. That's one of my thoughts are.
I'm just a little nervous about state grant announcements. Working for an agency that released many grants, we'd be months late, and there's no pressure on them to announce. This is probably the largest state grant program. And I know they usually try to roll these out because folks are dependent upon them. But if they told me end of October, it doesn't really matter to them if it's December 1st, January 10th. That's the only thing, and that's just out of our control.
That could easily happen. And then option 2, which is the non-grant option, is going to have to be decided as to what the amount is, which either is going to make the project economic.
Feasible or
not.
Would the board consider some type of an indication that the project with the grant option is the project you could support tonight? In the event that the grant doesn't go through, could then we agree to come back and talk to you again?
I have no problems with that.
Yeah, I'd agree to that.
Yeah, I'd like to say that, but I don't know where our capacity is.
Yeah, I get it.
I just got to know those numbers, and Kevin could probably tell us in 10 minutes.
I had a conversation with Kevin now, dating back about 6 months, and the substance of the conversation was, it's really going to be up to the selectmen to decide if you make it available.
Right, so I need to know, are we at 99% of our capacity or 82% of our capacity? And we've got wiggle room for a project like this.
No, I think
and we're not banking completely on some I&I savings.
I think we're approaching 80%. We're not at 99%. We're approaching 80%, and that's the threshold at which a lot of these discussions have come up, have percolated. So,
right. My recollection on that, Tony, was that we have the capacity, but we are approaching the state mandated
which is the 80%
ceiling.
Right.
So that the plant wouldn't fail, it wouldn't over capacity, but we'd have some issues with the state.
Yeah.
And I just want to say one comment on, 100%, everybody in this room knows that we have a large laundry list of things we have to pay for, and we're looking for money. This negotiation started a year ago in good faith, and this group has worked really hard to try to ensure that we do get that grant, and that they've based all their financial calculations on what the rates were at the time for the last year. I think that as a community, in good faith, we need to, of course, we will implore you to sharpen your pencils, but that to retroactively apply the rates that we just changed last time would not really be in good faith, is my opinion. There's always room for discussion about that, but this has been a long road, and everyone has worked really in the interest of both the project and the town. So it's my 2 cents on that.
I'm just going to make a quick comment. It's in my mind, it's pretty simple, and most everyone's heard it before, but, maybe this attorney hasn't, but we need to look at the other small neighborhoods, the individuals, all right? And we let this group come in and tie in, and, if they can save so the net is less or the same, I have no problem granting this. And, we can work out the details like Karen just said. Yeah, you guys have worked really hard on this for a long time, so that's in the details, with the rates and so forth. But I just have to be able to hold my head high, walk down the street and say, I let this group come in, and it's not going to push anyone else any further back in the line. It's going to, have the possibility to tying in. So it's pretty simple. You can skin the cat different ways, and how we get there, I don't care, as long as we can look at those people and say, the Drew company didn't push you back any further than you already were.
If I could, honestly, it's been a while, all right, in front of you. And I don't know how much information comes before you and how confusing it becomes on this issue. Our engineers come in originally and talked to your team. The capacity was there, so it wasn't a question of capacity. It is a question, I think, of so the capacity's there. You are approaching some state issue, and that's what the concern was. Secondly, all the work we've done has been reviewed by your team, including where they sent us out to look at pipes that we put robotic cameras in there to see if we could repair them, needed repaired. Turned out we were sent to look at pipes that were working perfectly fine. But again, people that's fine, but that was expense that we bore because just to get this thing done. Everything we're suggesting, forgetting the amount of money now, everything we're suggesting, I think one way or the other, between option 1 and option 2, we will have no increased impact with our project on the system. You have that there, and again, our engineers have looked at that, and your team has looked it over. So there's never been a disagreement about the fact that we would not add, extra weight to the system. Whatever we were going to do was basically going to, anything we put in, we were basically going to offer. So on either case, no, but I don't know how to, I don't know how to tell you how to check that, except to tell you that your people have agreed with us on that. So it was not been in any disagreement. So again, I don't know if there's some other source of information, but even on the repairs, we went to the state reviews, and that's how, so it was third-party driven on what we were going to do. So it wasn't just basically our engineers suggesting something to you. We went to a trusted third party. So I don't know what else, honestly.
Peer review, kind of.
Yeah.
Peer
So I don't
review
know,
with our experts.
honestly, we're not, I can say we're not basically impacting the system in any negative way if we do the things that we've said we would do. So. But I don't know what else I can tell you.
I can tell you this, we've invested over $547,000 into our system in I&I projects that have reaped no benefits.
I've heard you say that a number of times. No, I can't, that's why I have no way of telling you that I can dispute that. That's all I'm simply saying.
And I'm not doubting what you're saying, I'm just saying we just have to be cautious and.
No, I understand exactly, what I'm trying to say is, I know where you're coming from, I just don't know how to basically say any more, or give you any more evidence to show you that, quite frankly, what we're doing is appropriate, so.
So what if we were to then continue until our next meeting Are you here the Tuesday before our next meeting, which would be the the 27th, if we were to have one sooner?
I will not be.
Or not 27th, the 30th? Otherwise, it's the 6th. We have one on the 6th.
6th.
Yeah.
We're scheduled for the
Just-
6th.
What's that?
We're scheduled for the 6th.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you're...
I will be away the following week, but,
The weekend, the week before?
yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
That's election day, if it makes any difference.
I mean,
What, the 6th?
Yeah, the 6th is.
November 6th.
Yeah, that doesn't make any
we, I think we
Switched online.
could probably come,
Right.
well,
What's that?
I don't know that we have to meet. I mean, I think if we all say contingent on our capacity, understanding the capacity a little bit better, because I'm, at this point, a little confused with it. We're not talking about dollars, so if we feel comfortable with the capacity, then we can probably say whether we would support the project.
Yeah, I think the first option with the grant, in essence, says that they're either creating the capacity, that's what it is, and if they're creating it, then they're well within it, which is the no-brainer for you folks to say that's fine. I mean, that's, to me, I'm fine with that.
And if they're not successful in the grant?
And if they're not successful with the grant, well then, in my viewpoint, it's going to come down to dollars, is what it is. And that's another discussion for another day then, if we have to have it.
Okay.
That would
how I
be
would
helpful
say it.
to us if you could rationalize it that way as we go into the planning board meetings.
Yeah. How does the board feel about that?
Fine.
I think it's fine.
It's okay.
Is Kevin here?
I just asked, I was hoping to get them. All right, so you're looking for us, so if somebody were to propose a motion to, did you want to add something? I thought you put your hand up. Somebody want to propose a motion to approve the Drew Company's sewer connection with respect to a condition of grant application that has been submitted to the Mass Works. And providing they provide $229,000 to the town.
Just that portion?
then
I think that, that would be enough for you to be able to proceed.
Yeah, I think you'd be looking to, would be asking to approve, subject to the MassWorks grant approval and the provision of $229,000
to the town.
As
And
outlined.
in the event that the grant wasn't, then we would come back to the board and renegotiate.
Yeah, we can do it, this letter that,
Yep, then we can go from there,
let me take a one.
please.
To approve the Drew Company's sewer connection agreement as detailed in the October 11th memo, excluding the non-grant option portion.
Motion by Ms. Canfield, seconded by?
Second.
Mr. Harris. Discussion? Any further discussion? Questions from the audience? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gentlemen?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So so we'll put it back on the 9th, or will we?
No, right now, they're going to proceed forward,
You'll go
and then
forward.
if there's a problem, then we'll
Come
see you
back.
back again. You got it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
gentlemen. Appreciate it. Okay. Now, Nancy, for an 8:30. Back on? All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're back on. Red Sox won, that's awesome. Nancy, you're up next. We can talk about reimbursement for FEMA, the status of it.
Okay.
I know I kind of touched on it earlier, but now we'll go right back to it.
Jump in the
We'll
gun.
dive right in. Just as an update, we have 4 presidentially declared disasters that we are managing right now. Storm Sandy from 2012, Storm Nemo from 2013, Storm Juno from 2015, and Storm Riley, which everyone remembers from this past March. Since fiscal 16, we have received $692,000 in reimbursements from FEMA. And just to give you an idea of how long it takes to get reimbursed from FEMA, we received in August of 2017, so about a year ago, money for the blizzard from 2007. So if anyone remembers the blizzard of 2007, that was a presidentially declared disaster, we just got $4,900 for that one. So this is an idea of just how long it can take to get some of these funds reimbursed. So what we have outstanding right now, I provided to you, there's just over $12 million in open project worksheets called PWs, and what those are is a claim for damages with FEMA that has been accepted. It may or may not be obligated. In our case, most of these are obligated. Nemo 838, the one that's about midway for the Egypt Beach berm, which is the one you spoke about today, is not currently obligated by FEMA, meaning that they've agreed to reimburse, but it's on a 15-day review for an environmental assessment, so it's shortly to be obligated. And one of the reasons these projects have not moved forward that quickly is we don't want to move forward until we know that FEMA is going to obligate the funds. And FEMA administration changes its rules and regulations every few years. So something that you could do in one storm, you can't do in another storm. Point in fact that some of these larger ones, the $5.9 million for third cliff damage from Storm Juno, that project is not obligated and will not be obligated, but instead it's an SFM project, a Strategic Funds Management project, which means FEMA will not give MEMA the money. So when a project is obligated, FEMA will set aside the funds to MEMA to reimburse the town on a partial reimbursement basis. In this case, FEMA doesn't want to part with the funds, and they'll hold on to them, and we'll have to apply to MEMA, who will apply to FEMA to get partial reimbursements, and they'll take it down almost like in a drawdown fashion. So this is kind of the joy of bureaucracy when you go through this process. So of the $12 million, I do want to call your attention to about the middle of the pack on the document I gave you. That's that Egypt Beach berm that we spoke about tonight that you were awarded a contract. If you notice on this, the project worksheet is for $448,000, but when you were discussing it with Kevin, the estimated project cost is $764,000. That's because these quotes, when we did these original project worksheets back 4 or 5 years ago, that was the cost. So now, for many of these, we're going to have to go back and say, these are the current costs, now that we've designed the projects, which is what was on the special town meeting warrant, is the funding appropriation to actually design all of these, not just the Egypt berm that you awarded. Get the project worksheets updated for the correct costs. You can increase your cost estimate because time has passed, but you have to provide some type of backup for it. So this $12 million in open claims is likely to rise once those cost estimates are done. This also includes, you may have noticed if you were looking very closely, that this grid did not match the grid in the backup documentation I gave you for the special town meeting. The difference are a couple of projects that aren't foreshore related, so you'll see something on the bottom there for asphalt road repairs. We haven't completed all that work yet. There are donated resources, there's shelter and emergency protective measures from NEMO. Those are the last ones to pay, so everything else has to pay first, and then those close out, and that's why we got the blizzard from 2007 money. That was the end of the line payout. So of the total that's on project worksheets, we have $12 million. The estimated FEMA contribution towards that $12 million is $9.1 million, between 9.1 to 9.2. The town share would be approximately $3 million. So for approximately $3 million, you would design, engineer, and do those repairs to those foreshore structures. For those that are watching at home, it includes Minot Beach revetment restoration, second cliff revetment, third cliff revetment, first cliff revetment, the Egypt Beach berm, and actually, third cliff is on here for 3 different storms. So that's been another one of our problems. The Oceanside Drive, I do want to call that out to you. That project has been in flux. It was a identified claim, but we moved forward with those repairs on Oceanside and did those 3 sections of seawall. So FEMA at first told us, no, we wouldn't reimburse you because you did the work already without our approval, and you did an improved project. We raised them by 2 feet and we added splash pads. So because of that, we won't reimburse you, but you can use the $1 million in this project worksheet for an alternative project. Okay, great, we get to identify another $1 million worth of work, and we already have $12 million worth to do. Recently, in our FEMA discussions with the latest Storm Riley, they have changed their answer to that question to the point where they said, no, we'll reimburse you, it'll be an improved project, so we won't reimburse you for all of your costs for Oceanside, but we will reimburse you for this portion of the repair, as long as you can prove that the repair was done. So we've filed all the paperwork for that, and every time we meet with FEMA, we're meeting with them on Thursday, again, we're meeting now every Thursday with them, and MEMA, seeing what's going on with that. Are you really going to give us the $1 million back as a reimbursement, which would close out to free cash, because it's a reimbursement at this point? Or are you actually going to make us do an alternative project? How is it going to work? So we're still waiting for an answer on that one, so that one's kind of in flux. You know, we did the work, and that's the problem. When you look at these, you're like, why haven't we done the work? Well, one of it's funding. We have to, if we do it without FEMA having obligated it, we have to upfront the money. And then we have to go back and try to get the money back. Well, you've seen the lapse in time. It's difficult. Our other problem is some of this damage overlays itself from storm to storm. So by the time we've finished filing, had them down, had our inspections, got everyone to sign off that, yep, this is a project, these are our claims, or hit with another one, everything changes. So as Kevin said, Dan, one of our engineers, has maps that show all the different damage from all the different storms. Also, FEMA's only going to reimburse our 75% for our damage. So if this stone moved in the revetment and this stone moved, they'll pay to put that one back and that one back. But it doesn't, they're not going to pay you to move the other 4 in order to get it there. And that's been a problem. So right now, we're looking at, with the Emergency Management Director, our Fire Chief, John Murphy, and MEMA, and a consultant from MEMA and FEMA, we're looking at potentially moving forward with a consolidated project, which would take all of these PWs and lump them together into one project. And then there would have to be an improvement portion to that, but some of these PWs already have improvements built into them, and that would be something we'll explore. We would still get the same level of reimbursement.
Have they ever done anything like that before?
They actually came to us with the recommendation.
Great.
Because they had done it before.
Good.
Whether or not we want to move forward or not, we'll have to see, but, you know, we're working on that now with the town administrator to see, you know, if we could craft a letter to MEMA to have them consider us, and then forward that letter to FEMA to see if they would consider the town for a consolidated project. When you look at it at the scope of work that has to be done, God bless you, it makes sense, because then you design it as a whole, you put it out to bid as a whole, even if you phase it, and it's one project to be managed, and you can finally get it all done. So that's the difficulties that lie there. But if anyone who's been in my office, there's a yellow spreadsheet on the closet door in my office, and that's the FEMA reimbursements. And we're just trying to keep moving them before rules change, or regulations change, or the next storm comes.
Questions from the board?
So if this project comes in twice as much as they thought it was, are they going to pay that?
As long as we have to file paperwork with them before we did any work.
So
Once you start work, you're on
So my
borrowed
fear
time.
is that this $12 million is really $20 million, which means our $3 million contribution is really going to be a $5 million contribution. And I don't know where we're getting that money.
I think it's a realistic fear, because this does not include Riley, and the damage inventory right now for Riley is around 8 million. Whether that ends up being a true damage assessment, we'll find out as they go further along the process. And that's one of the things about the consolidated project, is if we decide to move forward, we get accepted, the experience that they have had, or what they're expressing to us that they've had, is they've been able to help communities get other grants to make up the difference towards their town share. So,
I mean, we definitely have to pursue that. I mean, even the couple $100,000 that we're paying for this one, I'm not in a good enough position to say that needs to be done or it doesn't need to be done. You know, and as well as all these other projects, I assume if it was in dire straits, we would have done it on our own.
one of the cliffs, and I'm not sure which cliff it is, I think it's the third cliff one, is significantly damaged. And that needs to be, that's where they're focusing their attention after the berm.
That's $9 million, is third cliff of the 12 million.
So that's why the consolidated project has, it's attractive right now. Whether or not it turns out to be feasible and continues to be attractive is if someone else is going to help us get grants and they're at a federal level, that's significantly helpful.
Right.
other than just little old us trying to get something. Now, they mentioned a community development block grant, as Jim has told you before, we're not very competitive for those, but there potentially are other things that we might qualify for. And I don't know if we couldn't qualify in a seawall and dam repair fund for part of a share on one of these parts of these projects.
How does that application work? Can you do them in tandem?
I don't know if we could or if we couldn't. We'd certainly try to find out.
Well, the reason why I wanted to see this, and I think the board, is so that we have an idea generally. There's $12 million potentially, but frankly, it could be 15 or 20, of which the town is responsible if we elect to go forward with reimbursement of 75% is certainly 25% of it, which, given our current climate, financial situation, it's very ominous, given the fact that it could be a lot of money. And other priorities, as we've talked about, which ones are going to be higher priorities that we need to focus on. But it's something that we have to be aware of. The town has to be aware of, not just us, just in general.
Well, the consolidated plan is going to put a $20 million, $15 million nut on the towns, and they're going to have to, we'd have to do an override to pay our $5 million of it.
Yeah.
Nancy, would we pay the whole thing and then get reimbursed? Or no?
It would be partial reimbursements as we went along.
Okay.
And we'd have to do the same thing like you would do with a school construction project. The town would have to authorize the full amount of the project in order to have a spending authorization, and then it would be reimbursable with the FEMA reimbursements could be used to offset the debt.
That may not be the best.
Yeah, that's not going to be.
It's something to think about as an option, but as I said before, it may not be feasible.
No, we do need to understand that risk to the community and to our tax base if we don't make these investments.
Yeah, that's what I said. I don't understand which each one of them is and
Yeah.
how important they are.
Right. You know, you look at Egypt Beach, but the public beach parking lot, I'm not sure which one that is, but I mean, it's only 10 grand, but still, it's probably lower priority than the revetments on Third Cliff. But I think it's important that we keep this in the forefront, given other issues that we're seeing that people need to be aware of, because these are all money contributions that are going to have to come from one source or another. Generally, it's going to be coming off taxes, unless we can find some way of paying for it. And frankly, even if you end up getting a bond from the state, you're still going to have to pay low-interest loan on it. You know, it's not free money.
And the principal.
And the principal, you're right. So I'm like, it's not free. Grants are different. That would be free.
Yeah.
But we're not getting into this, so. All right, well, Nancy, thank you very much. Appreciate it. That was a sobering, shall we say, discussion. Let's move on to new business. Actually, no, strike that. Let's go to the 8:40 discussion at 9:35 of a special town meeting warrant articles to the Selectmen. And I think tonight, sorry, Sean, thank you. Tonight, we pick which ones we're covering. Is that acceptable?
Wait, Maura's not here. so
She gets them all.
We can just
Say
decide.
Maura, the vice chair, gets them all.
Done.
Everybody all for that? I am. Let's see what we got here. So,
Do we know which one she wants? We have to do it
I
tonight?
asked her, she said she'd take anyone
Anyone
we
we don't
wanted.
want.
And so I think typically,
do
I do
one,
the first 2, 3, or 4. I think even 1, 2, unpaid bills, town share of grants, storm mitigation, remediation, that's Article 3. Fiscal year 2019 budget reconciliations, I'll take that one. Then we get to repairs to the water treatment plant, that's Article 5. I'm happy to cover that. I'll take
do
that.
5, whatever.
It doesn't
There's
matter.
only 12. You can do them all.
Looks like 14.
14.
And then, let's see, you got,
Who's doing 5?
I'll do 5 if John doesn't mind.
perfect. Any of the FEMA subsidized repairs to foreshore structures design, that's Article 6.
Do you want me to do it while I'm up there, or is that, I don't want to let someone else, it doesn't matter to me.
Sean.
Okay. And then Article 7, which is the Community Preservation Act. We have Roach Field, Wampatuck Play School, Playground,
I'm happy to do that one.
open space.
See.
Okay, so that's 7. Article 8, which is the general bylaw amendment of plastic bag reduction bylaw.
Be happy to, while I'm up there. do it.
Okay. So that takes Article 8. And then Article 9, which is the Capital Planning Committee that we're amending. It's really more of a,
Housekeeping.
What was that, 8? I missed
shall we
that.
say,
9.
so it's just changing 4 to 5 and making it consistent.
I'll get that one.
Oh, jeez, that's what I want.
You sure you can handle it, Tim?
And then we have 10, local option acceptance, property tax exemption, asset limit increase. 10, 11, and 12 are all the
I'll do those,
the change.
if you want.
Okay.
Yeah, you're already up.
Then that puts us to the community aggregation. How about if we give more of that one?
Do we, if it's a
her the last
petition,
two?
do we present it?
Well, she'll have to go up and at least
See
Tee
how
it
we
up.
stand.
tee it up and talk about it. And then the next one's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Then enabling and then the same. So she'll get the last two. How's that? That was easy, Jim.
Sure.
Tony, you gonna be able to do those ones? Joe's gonna get the crowd all revved up.
Which Joe?
Joe DeVito,
Oh,
he's
Joe.
gonna get
Yeah.
the crowd all revved up and going.
And we're going to do it in 3 hours like Marshfield.
Do less than that.
2?
Are we doing it at, we're doing it in the gym?
Yeah.
We're in the gym.
Good.
Okay.
1 days.
That takes care of that.
You might as well, we're gonna try the electronic check-in at the special town
right.
meeting, see how it works.
Good.
Moving on.
Moving right
New
along.
business. Discuss, vote, one-day liquor licenses. First one's tonight to Columbus, St. Mary's on October 20th, 2018, from 5:30 to 9:30.
Will the Board of Selectmen approve a one-day wine and malt license to the Knights of Columbus for an event at St. Mary's Parish Hall on October 28th, 2018, from 5:30 PM to 9:30 PM?
Second?
Motion by Mr. Harris, second by Ms. Canfield. All in favor?
Aye.
Will the Board of Selectmen approve a one-day wine and malt license to Ella McKenzie for an event at the Scituate Maritime Center on October 27th, 2018, from 2 PM to 6 PM?
Motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by
Second.
Ms. Canfield. All in favor?
Aye. And finally, move the Board of Selectmen approve a one-day wine and malt license to Taylor Tibbetts for an event at Scituate Public Library on October 28th, 2018, from 5:30 PM to 7:30 PM.
Motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by Ms. Canfield. All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. That takes care of that. Next, going on to a discussion vote for board and committee appointments. In particular, this is the Zoning Board of Appeals. We haven't dealt with this because Herringbrook was the 40B hearing that they had all summer. They just concluded it with a decision. So effective right now, Sarah Trees-Ice is no longer on the board. There's an opening. And the other person who's up for reappointment is John Hallen, who's the chair. And there are 3 people who are looking for it, but the applicants were Brian Sullivan, and then the other one was George Zizis. And I'm not sure what happened to Nancy Hertig. I think, did she go to the planning board?
No, she did not choose to move forward with that.
She was, what's that?
She did not.
She didn't, okay.
It was offered, but no.
And she didn't. So.
So is there one full and one associate?
So what it is no, what happens is John Hallen is a sitting one, and Sarah is just a voting member. And then the only other voting member right now is Ed Tibbetts. The 2 alternates happen to be Anthony Bucieri and then Thomas Kavanaugh. So, it's up to what the board would like to do. I know, as we know, Sarah Trees-Ice is no longer on it. It looks like John Hallen is looking to renew. My understanding is John Hallen is no longer a resident of Scituate, though. So we've had that situation before, where we've had people on the
How
board.
long has he been on there?
He has been on, served 5 years. This must be his 6th year.
That's it? Well.
And remind me, what are the is it bylaws with
Charter.
the charter says about, anything about residency for boards?
No, that's policy. The board has
Yeah.
policy, I forgot the policy, but we said that we'd rather have people who are actually residents on our boards. Otherwise, and we've had people in the past when we couldn't fill a vacancy. Like the last time I remember was the Waterways. Waterways. We had somebody who was from out of town.
So just, if you could clear it up, so we have 3 applicants or 4 applicants 3 applicants looking for 1 position?
For
Or John's position.
Or John.
2 positions that are open, one of which is actually vacant, the other is looking to be renewed. So 3 people for Actually, if you include the one who runs Renewal, 4 people for 2 positions.
Okay, I'll make a motion to, go ahead.
Well, can we just get the Howland thing figured out? Does he live in, do we know he doesn't live in Scituate?
Can we inquire whether or not he's a resident of Scituate? I know he's
Not
not,
a
he's not a,
resident.
he's not a voting member on the book as of 2018.
So all I remember is that Brian and George were both very strong candidates. I don't remember, I thought Nancy, like somebody said, was going to go to a different board. Although I think, I recall she was a very good candidate as well. So I'm just confused as to whether we had one, because I would support Brian in the one spot, but I want to know.
Can we put Brian on tonight and then look into the situation about John and do that?
I have no problems with that.
Okay.
There's an opening.
Yeah, well,
So why don't
this
we move-
Union Street is his address on his application.
And I don't know either, but we could ask him, find out.
What did he put on his application?
Union
For
Street.
Situate, so his
Situate.
application says he's a Situate resident.
Now, his application says 4 Union Street, which is his business. I'd like to know specifically if he is a resident of Scituate. He used to be in another location, and we need to know and clarify that. If he is, I have no problems with that. But I'd like to know specifically if he's residing there as a resident.
I'll find out.
Thank you.
Move to appoint Brian Sullivan to the vacant spot on the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term of 3 years. I'm probably supposed to be reading something.
Yeah, you probably
For a
should.
term of 3 years.
I got it. For a term of 3 years until a successor is named and completion of the Conflict of Interest Law online training program is completed within 30 days.
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, good. That takes care of that. Now, let's go to other business, liaison reports. Are there any reports from liaisons?
Of course.
Go right ahead.
Quickly, I just wanted to let everyone know the Council on Aging is co-sponsoring with the school music department a Navy Band concert as a special Veterans Day event on November 8th at the Performing Arts Center. And that Stephen Tripp is now the chair of the Beach Commission, and they are looking to get a liaison from the Conservation Commission named. So Conservation needs to do that.
Okay, so he just needs to call me, or call the Conservation Commission and see who it is.
Okay. That's it.
Jim, help me out a little bit. You were at the last meeting. It was, which meeting was this? No, maybe you weren't. Middle school building. We're going down the punch list there, and I'm just going to be kind of very vague about it. There are a couple of big, well, there's one big item that we're still kicking it around, and other things are just small. Probably meet for 5 or 6 more months, and then that committee, the middle school building committee, not the public building, will probably disband. Board of Health is, with the help of Lorraine and Michelle, are going to institute the program that the betterment program for the folks that need the Title V issues and the help with that. But it's moving pretty slow. But it's still, nonetheless, it's moving along. And it would not be without Michelle and Lorraine. So especially now, we're without a health agent. That's all I have for liaison positions.
Yeah, I mean, mine have been basically brought before us. CPC, their latest meeting was to discuss the property again, which came before us just last meeting, and the articles that are before us at the meeting that Karen's going to do that one, so the status quo, we're all up to speed on that. Rec is dealing with field issues, a lot of talk about their CPC project with the parking lot and the baseball fields and the turf projects in the back.
Did they come up with numbers yet? No, okay.
And just the water meeting that I had was discussed at the beginning of the meeting.
John?
I just had one other thing. I knew there was one other issue in the Waterways met last week, and the 2 guys that want to raise the oysters were there. Steve Moan as well as Mike DeMeo, are going to be forming the charge like we had asked them to do. But these 2 guys are very serious about it, and they the more I talk to them, they really do want to do it the right way. And it's especially with one of them, and I don't want to name names, he's not doing it for the money. He's really kind of doing it for, the educational thing. He grew up in this town, and he just excited to do something like this. It's got obstacles with Mother Nature and everything, but they're dedicated, and they really want to see this through. So in time, it's going to happen. And I know John and I have been talking to one of them for quite a few years. I don't know, it's pretty exciting. That's all.
All right. I have none, so I'll move on to correspondence.
Did you want to do this?
I don't think you usually do.
Okay. So the correspondence, there is a fundraising at the Scituate Food Pantry on Sunday, October 28th, 4 to 6 p.m. at the Masonic Hall on Country Way to learn about the activities and volunteer opportunities at the food pantry. Refreshments and light appetizers will be served. The Scituate I should have announced this. Scituate Accessibility Awareness Event is going to take place on November 3rd. It's a Saturday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Scituate Community Building. And there's, probably 30 different organizations that will be there. I went last year, and you can get so much information about various programs that are available to help people, everything from GATRA to the school nurse to Talking Information Center. So it's a very cool thing. We already acknowledged Mr. Boudreau's service to the ICMA. And the last is there's the Candidates Forum for those running for the state rep position representing most of Scituate and Marshfield. Will be tomorrow night at the library from 7 to 8:30 p.m.
Tony, did you have something you want to add?
I just wanted to give a quick update on the Scituate High School sports scene. I just wanted to wish all the teams going into the playoff season the best of luck. We've got volleyball, we've got golf that had a great year. The soccer teams are doing great. And I just wanted to mention the football team, which is 4-0 in their conference, and they won their conference and are going on to the playoffs. Last Friday night, it was a great game out here against Pembroke, I think it was, and it was seniors night, and there were a bunch of seniors that went on the field and celebrated their moment, and one of them was Colton Anahy, John's son. John was out there, very proud dad, and the team's doing great, and get out there. It's a great time. A ton of community out there, kids having fun, adults having fun. Go watch them play. I'm sure they'll have a home playoff game in probably 2 weeks, maybe?
Yeah, I think next week. Actually. Next week.
Go support them.
Aside from that, I have any...
Oh, were you going to say that? I'm sorry.
No. Thank you for doing it. Anybody have anything?
Other business?
Other business?
I do, and just a real quick. You don't have to answer it tonight, Jim, and maybe I was asleep and missed it. This would be the first time. Where is the golf committee stand?
Funny you should mention that, 'cause I just sent an email to Lorraine to put it on the agenda. They have an ad hoc committee.
Right.
And we need to just make that a actual Board of Selectmen committee. So I just sent an email to Lorraine like 5 minutes ago saying put it on the next agenda.
All right. No, I bumped into a gentleman today who's lived in this town an awful long time, avid golfer, worked down there, and I said, we're both in agreement. I said, we have so much on our plate, trying to move everything forward, but you were very enthusiastic about doing this, so I assured him it was going to happen. And, it's a $5 or $10 million asset to the town, so it should have, some.
Makes sense.
A group.
Yeah.
Watching over it. That's all. Thanks.
Funny you mention that, because I was actually going to say the golf committee, and the other one was to say that maybe we should talk about whether we should have a committee dealing with the brown water pipes that we should talk about, like what are we looking at to try to do it. I think maybe a discussion in the future we should have, instead of having just the water resources, something more specific tailored towards the distribution system, the water treatment plant, and focusing on that aspect. So we can maybe put that on a future agenda to discuss a little further. So aside from that,
Minutes?
Motion to adjourn?
We have some minutes? We have minutes, right, don't we? No minutes? We do. We have October 2nd, is it?
Move to accept the meeting minutes for the Board of Selectmen held on October 2nd, 2018.
Second?
Motion by Ms. Canfield, seconded by Mr. Vignani. All in favor?
Aye.
And
And we have the executive session minutes for October 2nd, not to be accept but not to be released.
move to accept not release executive session missions October 2nd, 2018, since the matters discussed are still pending at this time.
Motion by
Second.
Ms. Canfield, second by Mr. Vignani. All in favor?
Aye.
Folks, I've got one more motion from somebody.
Move to adjourn.
Sound documents.
Motion by Mr. Vignani. I think I heard a second from Mr. Harris.
Yes, you did.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Good night, folks. Thank you.
More candy than that.
I know. I'm like, the more I eat it, the more I'm like, oh, no.
You gotta start building your resistance for Halloween.
Building something else.
Yes, it always has to come up with good stuff.
Thank you.